When there were good ideas, we brought people together to make progress going forward. Truth and accountability are the things we need to do to fight waste.
Look how hunched over he is at the
we
podium.
We cannot sit by any longer.
Yeah,
and allow the
fair,
kind of spending that's going on in Washington, because every dollar they spend is a dollar that these people are not allowed to spend on their children and their grandchildren. It's robbing our country, and it's wrong.
Well, Governor, let me just follow up very quickly. New Jersey, when you were governor, had the second lowest credit rating in the nation after Illinois, and it was downgraded 11 times.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you inherit a blue state that has done that. But when you look at what we did on debt, Brett, in that state, we cut debt in that state, debt that had been left to us by 3 Democratic gubernatorial predecessors of mine who ran up that debt tremendously. And what you also saw us do was to cut the unemployment rate in half. It was over 10% when I became governor in 2010. What we also did was cut pension payments to public.
You spend much time like driving the Jersey Turnpike at all?
Being soaked by a public employee union system.
It's crazy.
Can
we let them just so the audience
Governor
can
Scott, Tim Scott, Senator Scott, excuse me. The song also goes after welfare programs.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we can because it's live. Let's see what's going on.
Argued for freezing federal spending.
All right, testing 1, 2, 3.
This was back in
okay, good. Yeah, we can.
80s.
Yeah, actually, if you just want to pause, I'll kind of introduce the stream to the few
people
who are coming in, and
also
kind of go over what we've seen so far. So, very frustrating. Christie Bolton 2024. Let's go. Shut the fuck up. Sorry, that chat hurt me physically. All right, so let's introduce everybody. We're going live. This is Brianna Wu. If you've never met her before, she's a fun gal. She's a progressive. She's trying to brainwash you into believing in the Democrat things and all that kind of stuff. That's what she's here for.
That's it.
Likewise, I'm trying to make everybody a centrist and, for them to abandon their lefty progressive degenerate ways. So we're going to start working together in order to do debate content and conversational content, breaking down the news stories of the day. And so that's what we're doing today. Like we're not officially launching our show, but we are, here to break down the RNC events, since obviously this is going to be huge. What we've seen so far, we actually saw the rich men from Richmond as the intro. Do you just want to I did not see that coming. I should have, but I didn't.
Oh, of course you did, because somebody's saying they're making a video package before the show, so they're going through the greatest hits. You missed it, where they're going through they find the most stereotypical feminists you can possibly find out on the street protesting abortion. They got that B-roll. They got all of it. So they're playing the greatest hits here.
Nice, very based. And so this is kind of what I was saying with, obviously I'm always punching left because, what I do, but we're going to be punching right tonight just because of the content that we're going down. But
good points. I will give them credit for it, 100%. I'm very interested to see how they handle themselves.
but the point being that I wasn't expecting rich men from Richmond. It feels a little on the nose, but I am happy that people are seizing upon the moment. This also shows that Republicans, God bless them, we were talking about this a couple of days ago, that they are always ready to seize on the moment. You think it's gauche? You think it's morally incorrect? You think it's wrong? You think that it's hypocritical? You think it's whatever? They don't care. They're going to use it as an aesthetic as long as it benefits them. They don't give 2 shits.
100%.
So I respect that about them. And then let's talk about whatever. So DeSantis, unfortunately, coming out very robotic with his first initial statements, which is frustrating for me because it's like, dude, you're the obvious successor if we're not going with Trump. How are you flubbing? You got any thoughts on that?
He's exactly what I thought. It seems to me, DeSantis' biggest problem is the more people find out about him, the less they like him. There's clearly an appetite in the Republican Party for someone that can have Trump's policies or at least his populist appeal, right? But without the indictments. Just to be frank, I think there's a real appeal for that, and I think a lot of conservatives like yourself were looking for someone that could be that person in the party. I think what we're finding is he's so personally repellent that people are just running away from him. We certainly saw that with his opening statement.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I feel like he's getting bad advice from somebody. I've seen him have personable conversations. I know that doesn't seem real considering the little clips that come out. I've seen him be intelligent and rhetorically gifted. I've also seen him imitate Trump's mannerisms in the most cringe way possible. That made me think like, okay, I understand what he's doing. He's trying to subconsciously imitate one of the most powerful people in the country so he can bite into his base. And so on some level, as cringe as that is, it's relatively smart. So if you get over the cringe, it's okay. But at the same time, he's replicating instead of creating. So instead of having his own panache, his own ideas, his own whatever, he's just trying to replicate. He's trying to be Trump light. And then explain this to me, Brianna. Why did he try to outflank Trump from the right?
I don't get it. It's there's clearly no lane for that. It's like, why would you? It's like, if you can have an Impossible Burger and you're not a vegetarian or a real burger, you're probably going to go have that real burger instead. So the Republican base is going to want the real thing if it's running. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But let's watch a little more of this and see where it goes.
Dealing with sacred cows. He does not talk about that anymore. You have been a senator, though, for 10 years. So what have you done to rein in the increasing size of government?
Well, thank you for the question. Over the last several years, I've had an opportunity to vote against spending package after spending package after spending package. What we also need to understand is that Joe Biden's Bidenomics has led to the loss of $10,000 of spending power for the average family. When you see 16% inflation, your gas is up 40%, your food is up 20%, your electricity is up 20%. We can stop that by turning the spigot off at Washington, sending the money back to the states, and allowing the decisions to be made at their own houses. I helped write the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. We cut taxes for a single mom like the one that raised me by 70%, for dual households by 60%, returning to the average family $4,000. If you don't send it to Washington, we can't spend it. That's good news for the American people.
Okay, but just to follow up, you did, during the Trump administration, you approved $4.4 trillion, $4.1 trillion, $1.7 trillion over the course of that administration. That's a lot of money.
There's no doubt that during the Trump administration, when we were dealing with the COVID virus, we spent more money. But here's what happened at the end of our time in the majority. We had low unemployment, record low unemployment, 3.5% for the majority of the population, 70-year low for women. African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians had an all-time low, but our inflation was at 2%. Under Joe Biden, we've seen the exact opposite. We've seen inflation explode, which led to 12 Federal Reserve increases that's devastating home buyers today.
Mr. Ramaswamy.
All right, so that felt very, I don't know, robotic. Did that feel authentic to you?
It's going to work. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay, go for it.
I don't think, or at least, well, actually, hold on. Let me caveat everything I said. I heard Jeb Bush talk like 5 years ago, like doing his like Spanish speech at SNL, and I'm like, that's the future president of the United States. And I was so wrong. Please clap. So the reason why I was so wrong was because I thought he was nice. I thought he was personable. I thought he was funny. I thought he was bilingual. I thought he was smart. I thought that he ran Florida relatively well and is remembered as a competent governor in the state of Florida. And despite the bad taste in America's mouth from the George Bush presidency, he does have a recognizable name. So I thought that Jeb would do relatively well. And then Donald Trump came out and fucking steamrolled his ass. So I've never
destroyed him. It was so boring. It was brutal. Even on the left, we're watching him just get eaten alive, and we know Donald Trump is going to be a worse guy, and we should not have been enjoying it. But just watching Jeb Bush, because look, let's get real. It's the Bush dynasty. Like, I think most people understand at this point the Iraq War was a mistake, and just watching that whole family get knocked down and pegged. I'm not going to lie, I really enjoyed that, but we got something much worse in the process. I guess this is where I really come down on this kind of Republican. So, you know, what I'm hearing from them over and over again is they're talking about like lowering, cutting spending. Ron DeSantis has said it. Christie has said it. And I think for a lot of, tell me if I'm wrong here, I think for most Republicans out there, it's not that they're against spending. I think that they're against what things get spent on. I think most people want more money coming for their community. I think they want better schools. I think they want better highways. I think it's this inverted economics where we're like, funding things for the ultra rich, right? Am I off on that?
No, you're not. Literally, I just showed chat my sticky note. I'm taking sticky notes as we go through. I say Americans don't care about spending. They care about spending on the wrong things.
Right.
So
right.
so from a Republican perspective, if you're, I'm not hating on the Ukraine war. I have my own perspective on it. But if you go to a average voter and you say, we spend $34 billion on Ukraine, which we didn't do, right?
Yep.
We sent military supplies. Yep. But if you just say that as a talking point, and then you say, we spent $34 billion on, and then they look around in their communities and they're devastated and they're ripped apart and they're all that kind of stuff. And then you also say like, well, the Democrats, they're like the globalists. They care about the globe more than they care about their home. If you're in West Virginia and you see a bunch of,
it's effective.
If you see dilapidated infrastructure outside of your house, and if you see dog shit schools outside of your house, and then you hear $34 billion is going over to Ukraine, of course you're going to be like, why the fuck are you not spending $34 billion here? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And so one of the things you were saying, well, is this going to work? I think this is like wrapping the medicine in a thing of cheese to make the medicine go down. What Republicans are really doing is they're priming Republicans for fiscal austerity. They're saying that when we were in charge, the economy was working. So even if you don't like fiscal austerity, while we were doing it, it was good. And on top of that, our taxes are targeted for the working and middle class. Think of my single mom who I cut her tax liability by 60%. So regardless of what the policy actually does, they're saying that they're cutting taxes for the people who are important, and they're going to spend money on the correct things.
Yeah, I hear it. It feels to me like with Trumpism, it was really bizarre for me to watch because I'd sat through 30 years of the Republicans saying like, we're for low taxes and low spending, and then Trumpism comes along and it's like, no, we actually want this, we actually want this war on wokeism, right? We actually want the Muslim ban, we want this, we want that. And economics just did not seem to be a big factor of how Trump tended to rule, right? And I understand there's some things like him trying to renegotiate some trade agreements with Mexico, but I think in the aggregate, I think the Democratic Party is a messaging problem. And don't get me wrong here, I've served my tour of duty in the culture wars more than most people, but I think sometimes we get so focused on standing for this group and that group that people get the idea that that's where our policy focus is. I actually think the Biden administration has not been very effective at communicating what they've done for normal working class people. And I think we should focus on that more. I think it's a path to victory.
I could expand for another 5 minutes, but I guess we could get back into the content, and then we can save it for the next round.
That's good.
You're listening to these answers.
If I may,
hold on one second.
We're going to, so I don't know if I get a chance to respond.
He didn't mention you.
I forgot Pence was even running.
Mr. Vice President. Mr. Ramaswamy, listening to all of this, why should voters choose you over more experienced politicians on this stage? You're basically, a blank slate for people. You're 38 years old. You've said that you only voted in 2 presidential elections before this moment, this political race.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage? I'll tell you, I'm not a politician, Brett. You're right about that. I'm an entrepreneur. My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. I have gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That is the American dream. And I am genuinely worried that that American dream will not exist for our 2 sons and their generation unless we do something about it. And I do think Brett is going to take an outsider, because for a long time we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be an American today. If you have a broken car, you don't turn over the keys to the people who broke it again. You hand it over to a new generation to actually fix the problem. That's why I'm in this race, and we're just getting warmed up.
All right, so you can
That's a strong answer. I think that's a strong answer. How do you feel about that?
I think that I've seen some things where he's just a tech bro. He has wild ideas. He's crazy. He focuses on the wrong things at the wrong time. He's had some cringe moments with whatever. But what I see when I hear that is I hear somebody who's thinking on his feet, is charismatic, is hitting talking points that other people are not hitting, is actually listening to what's being said in the room and then responding accordingly. And I think that one of the biggest moments with what I think it might have been Marco Rubio, was somebody made fun of him for being like a robot and having the same stump speech over and over and over again. And then he went,
chrischristie. Yep.
He went into his stump speech, responding to being accused of being a stump speecher, and everyone laughed at him in the room. As far as I know, his campaign was annihilated after that moment. And so I'm not saying that this dude is going to do well. For all I know, he'll put his foot in his mouth because he's being creative and weird. But I think he would have the flexibility, if he says the right things at the right times, he'll have the flexibility to build momentum and a name for himself and a brand, basically.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So Scott Adams, I remember Scott Adams talking about this guy when he had his whole thing a few months ago, and I was like, who is this guy? And I watched him. It was like, look, I want to be clear. I don't agree with his policies, but he can think on his feet. He's being authentic. And I appreciate that he's bringing a positive vision for what he wants America to be, right? Like, I think for all of us, this is on the left and the right, if you have this exhausting, pedantic vision of the other guy sucks, vote for me. It's just like, it's my own party does this. And it's just, there's a limit to how long it's going to work. If he's out there talking about what the Republican Party can eventually be, I think that's an effective message.
I'll pray.
Let's go.
So why are you better positioned to turn around this economy that we've heard all of these voters talking about tonight than Mr. Ramaswamy, who is a successful entrepreneur nationally right now? He's beating you in the polls.
Well, I don't care about polls. What I care about the fact is that no one is telling the American people the truth. The truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Our Republicans did this to us too. When they passed that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, they left us with 90 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. No one has told you how to fix it. I'll tell you how to fix it. They need to stop the spending. They need to stop the borrowing. They need to eliminate the earmarks that the Republicans brought back in. And they need to make sure they understand these are taxpayer dollars. It's not their dollars. And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt. And Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt. And our kids are never going to forgive us for this. And so at the end of the day, you look at the 2024 budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So you tell me who are the big spenders. I think it's time for an accountant in the White House.
Vice President Pence?
Woo, that's rough. I don't know how many friends it's going to get her. What do you think?
I think that will get her 0 votes. And the reason why is because she's saying, hey, remember when you were trying to survive during COVID? We shouldn't have given you that money because of inflation, because fuck you, skill issue. Which is funny. Like, I think it's funny. But what she did do that I think is kind of based is she has the balls to call out other Republicans and Trump. And so I think that I don't think this is going to help her in polling. I don't think this is going to help her become popular with anybody. I think that people are just going to be like, base comment, still not going to vote for you. Good job, holding other people to account. But that's not a policy that I think is actually popular.
I think it's two things too, because, okay, so I can say this, you can't. I think that it's something for a woman to come out like scolding the Republican Party, like, oh, Donald Trump did this. That's just not going to, in my view, that's not going to be a really good way to ingratiate yourself to that. What does he have, like 61% of that base? It's just very, it just comes across as very lecturing, I think, even though I agree with the message. But the other thing is, it's like she's talking like she's an outsider for the Republican Party when she's like the definition of an insider. It strains credulity, at least in my eyes.
You say that, and before we move on, the only thing, though, is I think that there is something like where women do take more shit when they're being scolding or naggy or wagging fingers or whatever. But I think shrill women take way more shit than boss bitches. So there's a difference between being like a shrill bitch and a boss bitch. And if you're a boss bitch, like people love Tulsi Gabbard. She says mean shit all the time. But
100%.
she is authoritative. She's confident. She's competent. She seems like she can hold her own in a room full of men, all that kind of stuff. And so maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm not sexist enough. But I kind of get the more competent, confident vibes from Nikki Haley rather than the shrill mom who's wagging her finger at you. At least that's my vibe.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's more of that. I do think it's a really big risk, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think the polls are showing.
I'll try to get better. It's fine.
Work on it. Sounds good.
In the wrong direction.
You will mention that.
Boy, if that's not an appetizer for what the rest of this thing's going to look like, I don't know what is. The gloves starting to come off right at the end of that. A tease for what's coming next.
I bet we kept down pause too
guys,
long.
it was Bidenomics, it was climate change. Frankly, I was a little surprised by that second topic, but it was actually
I don't know what this is.
Really interesting and unleashed a lot of commentary. Let me go around the horn.
I do not see something to do that. Nope.
All right, fuck it. We'll go live. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
We'll do it.
What are you thinking, man?
Yeah, it was like a flurry of punches right before the bell. Who thought a question about climate?
I guess they're doing like a commercial break. So I think a lot of this is just like it's like.
Do you want to talk over and just mute it on the screen?
Yeah. I think it's like they're trying to just remind you who all the people are. We're not even really getting into issues. It just seems like the one constant thing that they're talking about is spending, which just seems really bizarre to me when inflation is like, say what you will about Biden, he's been relatively effective at getting inflation under control, in my view, at least.
Yeah, that's not going to be the perception on the exterior, and the reason why I would say, at least for me, you know, I'm still a pretty normie person with a pretty normie income. I got a good job under Trump, and then not that he was responsible for it, I just got a good job. Then while the good job was doing good, I got some raises. And so, you know, I got some good raises and, you know, everything was going well. And then even during COVID, my company, I'm lucky to work for a megacorp, they gave me like an 8% raise. But I took a 30% hit. So when we're going to grocery stores and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, you know, basically what I used to buy 2 or 3 years ago is double what it was.
Yeah.
And then power bills are increased by 20% because of whatever stupid reason. Everything's across the board is increased by 20%. I'm scraping by. But I'm scraping by my fingernails. And so as a result, it's like, are things balancing? Maybe. Are they better than they were 6 months ago to a year ago? Probably. But is it going to be enough in time for the election? So if the economy is doing well by the time of the general, I think Biden will clinch it. If people still feel like they're holding on by their fingernails, I think that's going to be giving Republicans a lot more viability, not through some economic genius of Republicans, but just because typically if the economy is poor, the other person is going to get voted for.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. And, you know, something I've really found throughout my career is, the economists can come out with X indicator or Y indicator. It doesn't really matter if people aren't feeling it, right? And I do think there's a sense of lethargy and fear. I think it's really exacerbated by these housing prices that are just skyrocketing across the board. I don't know what it's like in Florida, but in Massachusetts, like all I hear about is rent housing. It's just insane, right? So I think that's really the question. Like the economists can write whatever they want, but I think you're really right that people aren't feeling it at this point.
Yeah, and sorry, if we can expand while they're still doing commercials or whatever. I think that's one of the main things, but at least I'm old enough. I'm becoming a boomer myself. I remember the economic collapse of 2008, which largely came from the subsidizing and deregulating of housing, which was fantastic for the economy probably for a decade. We had housing going up all over the place. People who had never even dreamed of home ownership were doing it, et cetera, et cetera. But then, of course, if you go watch a film like, I think The Big Short, you'll see why that thing collapsed. It was a house of cards, basically. And so as a result, I think generationally, we can get into the debate in a second, but generationally, we might be scared of subsidizing housing again, of building new housing again. That might be what's required to get us out of the slump.
We are
6
back.
State referendums all have upheld abortion rights in this country. And even in red states, there are more swing state referendums that are coming up as we head into the elections as well on this. So, Governor Haley, what do you say to your party and to your state, which today confirmed a 6-week abortion law as well, especially the impact on women suburban voters across this country?
Thank you, Martha. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children, so I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, we need to stop demonizing this issue. This is talking about the fact that unelected justices didn't need to decide something this personal, because it's personal for every woman and man. Now it's been put in the hands of the people. That's great. When it comes to a federal ban, let's be honest with the American people and say it will take 60 Senate votes. It will take a majority of the House. So in order to do that, let's find consensus. Can't we all agree that we should ban late-term abortions? Can't we all agree that we should encourage adoptions? Can't we all agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? Can't we all agree that contraception should be available? And can't we all agree that we are not going to put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty if she gets an abortion? Let's treat this like a respectful issue that it is and humanize the situation and stop demonizing the situation.
Brett, Governor, hold on. You're not mentioned, Vice President Pence. Governor DeSantis.
You think so? I like that she's talking about like, oh wait, I've got to hear what
Biggest financial backers.
Oh, I see. Okay. Of course, they only asked Nikki Haley the abortion question. Of course, they're going to. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate that she's talking about, making contraception available. That's really good. I think what I really take objection to is, if you're talking about banning late-term abortions, you're talking about banning access to care for someone that may have a child that's going to grow up, they're immediately going to die as soon as they give birth. Like most late-term abortions tend to be true health and life of the mother issue or severe developmental issues. And it just it's not that I don't understand the impulse to get in there and say this should not be something that happens this late because it feels more like life to us. It's just that pragmatically it is so overwhelmingly people that are really facing serious issues, they're gonna just have a child with that's gonna die as soon as you give birth, giving the woman extreme trauma. I don't know. I can't get on board with it.
Yeah, so I think if we were going to articulate the steel man there, we would have with exceptions.
Sure.
I think that a majority of conservative abortion law that has been passed has had exceptions, and when they haven't, they've paid a political price because they're effectively handing propagandistic fodder to the other side. So what I would say, what Republicans probably need to hit, this is a Republican debate, so they're not catering to liberals and progressives. But if they're catering to the general electorate, I think they need to say ban late-term abortion with exceptions for rape, incest, and grievous bodily injury to the mother, to the child, and grievous genetic abnormality that's going to cause suffering. Most people with those caveats or not most people. Most conservatives are going to view that as a slam dunk. And if progressives and liberals pull back from that, then you can appeal to pragmatism all you want. You can say that this is only 2.8% of abortions, 90% of the ones that are performed are because of health issues or any of that kind of stuff. But we don't approach that when it comes to, so this is a conservative talking point that I agree with, is we don't take that approach when it comes to homicide. Homicide is 15,000 murders a year. It's dropped into the bucket. Who cares? It's, on the scale of things, there's 340 million people in this country. 15,000 is nothing. You could literally fit it into a stadium, throw it in the middle of, the middle of the Midwest. You could drive by, you could fill that up with all the dead bodies of murder victims. You wouldn't even notice it for decades. And so as a result, we ban murder, even though it's statistically insignificant, because it's so serious, it's so messed up, it's so impactful, it damages communities, it frays social relations, all that kind of stuff. So why not just say healthy fetus, healthy mother, after, 22 weeks, 18 weeks, 20 weeks, we'll come up with a number that people can relatively agree with. If it's a healthy fetus and a healthy mother, you got to keep it. That's going to be conservative all day.
I think we're not going to agree on this, but I hear where you're coming from. I think, as far as being a message for the Republican Party, do you think they even want to hear those kinds of limits? Because it seems like there's some in the Republican Party, like a federal ban on abortion is a very popular way to go. Like there is a rising sense in the fringe conservative movement where banning contraception is something you're seeing conservative commentators talk about increasingly. So, I mean, do you feel like there's an appetite out there for the hardcore non-moderate position on this?
Yeah, so I think that there's an important saying within the past 2 years, particularly when it comes to Republican politics. You can't win a primary without Trump. You can't win a general with him. And so as a result, what I would say is it's a very tricky line. But in the rhetoric, in the Republican primaries, in the Republican, or even in the general, maybe, you would be very unnuanced with your takes. You would just say, we're going to ban late-term abortion. The Democrats can suck it, screw them. We're going to do what we're going to do. MTG, Jewish space lasers, it's all awesome. Give me your Twitter follows, right? And that's the rhetoric that you take into the politics. But then when it actually comes to crafting legislation, then you pull out those nuances. That way you can actually win the electorate and say, hey, listen, we got aggressive rhetoric. We got a bunch of crazy people saying a bunch of crazy things, but we actually are tailoring policy that broad swaths of Americans can support.
I would love a Republican Party that acted that way. I don't think that's what we have. I want to see what RonDeSantis says here.
Yep.
Oh, look, you got to do what you think is right. I believe in a culture of life. I was proud to sign the heartbeat bill. I remember one of the most impactful moments of my life was when I heard the heartbeat of my oldest daughter in my wife's womb and then saw the sonograms of all three of my kids. What the Democrats are trying to do on this issue is wrong, to allow abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. I know a lady in Florida named Penny. She survived multiple abortion attempts. She was left discarded in a pan. Fortunately, her grandmother saved her and brought her to a different hospital. We're better than what the Democrats are selling. We are not going to allow abortion all the way up till birth, and we will hold them accountable for their extremism.
But just to be clear, Governor, would you sign a 6-week ban federally?
I'm going to stand on the side of life. Look, I understand Wisconsin is going to do it different than Texas. I understand Iowa and New Hampshire are going to do different. But I will support the cause of life as governor and as president.
We
choosing not to answer it.
must have a national.
Hold on, Senator. Vice President Pence. You're shaking your head.
Well, look, I'm not new to this cause. After I gave my life to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I opened up the book and I read, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And see, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. And I knew from that moment on, the cause of life had to be my cause. And I've been a champion for life in the Congress, a champion for life as governor and as vice president. And to be honest with you, Nikki, you're my friend, but consensus is the opposite of leadership. When the Supreme Court returned this question to the American people, they didn't just send it to the states only. It's not a states only issue, it's a moral issue. And I promise you, as President of the United States, the American people will have a champion for life in the Oval Office. Can't we have a minimum standard in every state in the nation that says when a baby is capable of feeling pain, an abortion cannot be allowed? A 15-week ban is an idea whose time has come. It's supported by 70% of the American people, but it's going to take unapologetic leadership that stands on principle and expresses compassion for women in crisis pregnancies. I'll do that as President of the United States.
He called my name, so I want to respond to that.
30 seconds.
So first of all, I will say it is in the hands of the people, and that's where it should be. But when you're talking about a federal ban, be honest with the American people. We haven't had 45 pro-life senators in over 100 years. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president could ban all those state laws. Don't make women feel like they have to decide on this issue when you know we don't have 60 Senate votes in the House.
70% of the American people support legislation legislation
But
to ban
70% of
abortion
the
after a
Senate
baby is
does
capable
not.
of experiencing pain.
You know what?
It's just going to take leadership.
Gotta be honest with you. I think this is a winning issue for Democrats, and I love hearing them talk about this. I think it's going to get replayed all day long. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, this is probably where we're gonna have some issues, because I think that started out cringe and then rounded it out to it's kind of like this is the game that you're playing, especially in the world of clips, in the world of short form media and all that kind of stuff. What they're going to show is pro-life. I'm a pro-life president. We're going to have a pro-life champion in the Oval Office. We're going to ban abortions, X, Y, Z, ABC. They're not going to play the next 45 seconds where he says, actually, 70% of Americans do support banning abortion after the fetus is capable of feeling pain. And by the way, if he added on to that, I think that having a 1 minute, a 1 minute segment where he says, with these caveats, I think that we could get the Senate on board or something like that. If he did those caveats, he would probably get booed here, but he wouldn't have eaten alive in the general. And so this is obviously the balance of politics, is you're playing to the audiences to be able to capitalize on attention, to be able to get to new places, so you can capitalize on more attention, so you can turn it into an electoral win. And I don't envy his position.
Yeah. Awesome. I think just so you know, you're cutting out a little bit, and I'm having trouble hearing you.
Hold on.
70% of the Senate does not. You have to be honest with the American people.
We have to have a 15-week limit.
Right. Let's get Governor Bergman for one minute here. But the Supreme Court did overturn Roe v. Wade, and the result of that decision was that it went back to the states. So that's where it is right now. So as I understand it, you are not in favor of a federal ban. What do you say about the states? There's about 5 of them, including New Jersey, I think a few others, that allow abortion up until the time of birth, though. If you were president, would you be able to abide that?
Well, first of all, I'm a pro-life governor of a very pro-life state. And this issue is, of course, very important. But I am on the record, and I stand behind that we should not have a federal abortion ban. We should not. And the reason why we shouldn't is very simple. It's the 10th Amendment in the Constitution. In the Constitution, which the states created the federal government, not the other way around, it says that there were certain duties allowed to the federal government delegated to them by the states. The rest are left to the states, or importantly, or to the people. We need to get back to freedom and liberty for the people in this country. And we can't have Republicans who fight for 50 years for this great cause and to return it back to the states, and then the next day they turn around and go, no, the feds should do that, because the feds are stepping into people's lives, they're stepping into people's businesses. Over and over, if we say that the Fed should be in on this one, where do we stop? I say that we follow the Constitution, and this is returned to the states. This is where it should be.
But Governor Burgum, you signed a 6-week ban. Time out. You signed a 6-week ban. Governor Burgum, you signed a 6-week ban. So you're saying federally, it's all going to go to the states.
Yes, and what is going to work in New York will never work in North Dakota, and vice versa. That's
Governor
why 50
Asa
states.
Hutchinson,
That's why
right here.
50 states.
This is too important of an issue that I have to address. First of all, the Supreme Court gave it back to the elected representatives, whether it's the states or whether it's the United States Congress. So there is authority, and that's why President Biden is pushing for a Democrat proposal, which is, in essence, abortion on demand through the term. So they have their extreme position at a national level. It's most likely going to be addressed in the states, but it's certainly fine for it to be addressed at the national level as well. Arkansas has the record of being the most pro-life state in the nation. I signed 30 pro-life pieces of legislation while I was governor. And every state can determine a different outcome here. And it is the most important issue for women and for the unborn child and for our country that we get this right. It's going to be a continued debate. Let's talk about it in terms of compassion, in terms of protecting the life, and also understanding how we have to enhance adoption services, how we have to enhance maternal care. Those things we've done in Arkansas and are important for our nation's future.
There are a lot of issues that are very important. Senator, I'll let you weigh in.
We cannot let states like California, New York, and Illinois have abortions on demand up until the day of birth. That is immoral. It is unethical. It is wrong. We must have a president of the United States who will advocate and fight for, at the minimum, a 15-week limit. I am 100% pro-life conservative. I have a 100% pro-life record. I got to tell you, though, we must fight for life. Our Declaration of Independence says our Creator gave us inalienable rights that include life. That is a list. That is an issue we must solve. We can't leave it to Illinois. We can't leave it to Minnesota. We can't leave it to Illinois. We must solve that issue with a 15-week limit at a minimum.
Brett, I think we're all pro-life, but what I would love is for someone to ask Biden and Kamala Harris, are they for 38 weeks? Are they for 39 weeks? Are they for 40 weeks? Because that's what the media needs to be asking.
All right, another issue is America.
Oh, man. I'm just telling you right now, this is the only moment that people are going to be talking about tomorrow. It's going to play on repeat. This strikes me really similar to when the Democratic Party can sometimes focus on these little esoteric issues that matter a lot for certain bubbles, but it just has no resonance whatsoever for the rest of the country, right? I think that a lot of women see this the same way you kind of see guns, where it's a freedom issue. You don't want the government putting limits on what you can do with your body, and I think this is just going to terrify a lot of women into really doubling down on voting.
Listen, we're not asking for much. We're asking for common sense abortion control. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm memeing, obviously, but
yes.
Let me turn myself up. There we go. Okay. So, at least on my gain, because apparently people were saying I was too low. So, I made a joke about common sense abortion control, but at the same time, here's the thing. I think that this is an opportunity with the right knowledge, with the right rhetoric, with the right intelligence. You could get a message out there that might resound with the general population. The problem is when you caveat it all around this, it's a moral issue. We need to be federally authoritarian. We need to go after Illinois, and we need to go after California, and we need to go after New York. We're coming for your abortions. What did that stupid kid from Texas say? He's like, oh, yes, we're coming for your AR-15s and blah, 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 blah. It's this is hell yes, we're coming for your assault abortions. So anyways, I'll try to wrap up the point, though. But I think that if you actually look at Europe, they do have effectively 15 to 20-week bans on abortion. They are between 15 and 20 weeks. So I think that if you mitigated your rhetoric just a little bit and you just said, listen, this is a freedom issue. I do think it belongs to the states. And I think 30% of that crowd was cheering for the constitutional originalist guy. So I think there is a healthy chunk of the Republican Party that is libertarian, that does sympathize with liberals, that does sympathize with progressives from the freedom perspective. But just to get to the authoritarian stuff, I think if you caveat it in this is not crazy, abortions after 15 to 20 weeks are banned, except for the exceptions that make sense. And then that's an infinitely more tenable position.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying for the Republican Party. I mean, obviously, I'm never going to agree with that, but I think your point is well said.
America and the crime crisis, the homelessness crisis. American cities are in decline. People are moving out as homelessness, drugs, crime move in.
The housing crisis.
There are problems accelerated. They did accelerate during the pandemic and are still rising, actually.
Murders in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, all up 30% between 2019 and 2022. Homelessness is up 11%, the largest jump in recorded history. Jesus. Vice President Pence, a lot of this began in the COVID era. How much of what we're seeing happening around this country is a result of those COVID lockdowns? And is your administration in part to blame for how we got here?
Well, I think what's in part to blame is the Democrats been talking about defunding the police for the last 5 years.
Fuck off.
And we ought to be funding law enforcement, particularly in our major cities, at unprecedented levels. I mean, it's extraordinary to think about the violence that's claiming innocent lives literally every week in every major city in this country. And yet Democrats and liberal prosecutors in major metropolitan areas continue to work out their fanciful agendas, to do bail reform and go easy. What we need is strong commitment to law enforcement. We need leadership in Washington, D.C. that'll marshal the resources of the states, marshal the resources of the American people. But let me also say it's about opportunity. I mean, a lot of people don't know that those Trump-Pence tax cuts that we got signed into law go away at the end of 2025 if we don't have a Republican president and a Republican House and a Republican Senate. When I'm president of the United States, we're actually going to cut taxes further. We're going to extend those tax cuts, and we're going to close the Federal Department of Education, block grant all that funding back to the states. With a growing economy and educational choice and law enforcement, we will bring our cities back.
Governor Christie, another issue. This weekend here in Milwaukee, reports say there were 30 shootings, and a number of them including kids. Add that to the big increase in school shootings around the country. Democrats blame this crisis on easy access to guns. They also blame Republicans for blocking gun control legislation. What would President Christie do?
You know, I'm proud of the fact, Brett, that I'm the only person, along with Governor Hutchinson, up on this stage who's actually running United States Attorney's Office. I ran the 5th largest office in America in a state where there is significant urban crime. And the problem is not going to be solved by more money. The problem is that these prosecutors in these localities in the states are refusing to do their job and to arrest violent criminals. So what a President Christie would do is appoint an attorney general who would instruct each of the 93 U.S. attorneys that they are to take over the prosecution of violent crime in every one of those cities that are failing to do so. We have plenty of room in the federal prisons to lock up these violent criminals and clean up what's going on all across this country in these individual cities. Secondly, what we need to make sure that each and every one of these criminals understand is that the laws apply to everybody. And when Hunter Biden fills out a fake application, a false application for a gun permit, and then is facing a 10-year mandatory minimum, which was mandated by legislation sponsored by his father, and then you have a Justice Department that walks away from those charges, we're telling people that the law doesn't apply to everybody. In a Christie administration, he would go to jail for 10 years.
What about a president?
Well, I'm not going to object to Hunter Biden going to jail. Throw the book at him, no issue whatsoever.
I'm kidding.
No, but so this is how I feel. You know, I've recently gotten to be friends with the actual justice warrior who really knows his stuff when it comes to crime stats. And
be careful. He is super rhetorically dangerous. Very
I
dangerous.
I agree with that. But I think he covers a issue that the Democrats really have a blind spot on. You know, there was a TikTok that came out the other day of a woman in San Francisco just talking about her fear when she's like out on the street getting assaulted. You know, Anna Kasparian, she has gotten under attack for, you know, her own feelings with homeless people, like literally committing violence against her. And I do think it's something I hear a lot when I'm going out to events here in Massachusetts.
Hold on.
You know, I'm not. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I was watching my favorite leftist streamer, Vosh / Hassan Piker, and they, despite spending 40 to 60 hours a week inside their houses watching streams and reacting to stuff, they told me that homeless people are actually based. They're super cool. They don't do anything wrong ever, that we can just let them hang out. It's totally cool that they do drugs and all that kind of stuff. It's not a law enforcement issue. It's a drug issue. It's a social issue. It's a sociology issue. We don't need to do anything about this. It's not a problem. Anna Kasparian is exaggerating. Don't worry about it. So are my two favorite leftist streamers wrong?
I think they're out of touch on this issue. I do. I think that normal people want to feel safe. I think that's a really basic thing they want from their government. And I think these stats are rising, and I think Democrats do need an answer on it. Now, the thing that makes sense to me is, drug treatment program, expanding drug courts, making sure we have more resources for, people with mental health issues, hell, just bringing down the cost of housing with some additional investment in Section 8 housing. So, people have a place to live. Like, I think that this is when it really comes down to it, I don't think the central issue here is we're not tough enough on crime. I think it's that we underinvest in our communities. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm of two minds. Carrot and stick, always. Like as a centrist, I joke about being an authoritarian centrist. Carrot and stick always. So there are people who are down on their luck and they need a ramp back into society. That means that they need to be able to get sober. They need to be able to get housed. They need to be able to get employment. They need to be able to pay their bills. They need to be able to get cell phones. They need to be able to get internet access. And if they choose to want to get their lives together, then particularly as a Christian-founded nation, a nation that espouses to be Christian, we are supposed to forgive people and provide redemption and allow them back into society and all that kind of stuff.
100%,
So that on-ramp, and then here's where the stick comes. If somebody physically attacks a young woman on the street, then a 6'4", 200-pound man needs to make it his business to ruin that person's day. And so it is both simultaneously. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. And I think, there's certainly there are evil people out there. I know progressives don't want to hear it. There are evil people out there that want to hurt people on the street, and cops have to deal with them. You were telling me the other day, I thought about this all damn day after we got off the phone, how you used to get paid $40K a year to basically hold down some guy's high on crack, right? And bring him off to jail, right?
Listen, it was acid and methamphetamine, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry for the factual error there. But that is a deeply unpleasant job. I certainly wouldn't do it for $40,000 a year. But you need people like that in a society. So I feel like, I hate to both sides it here, but I do think Democrats are underrepresenting how salient an issue this is electorally. And I think Republicans really focus on this, like you can just throw people in jail enough to solve the problem. And I don't think that's true.
I know we got to get back into the content, but okay. So homeless people increased by 10%. Let's just all put them in jail. I'm sure that's not going to cost the taxpayer insane amounts of money. That's not going to throw good people behind bars. That's not going to demoralize law enforcement. That's not going to, So obviously, as much as I feel like Democrats are out of touch, that crime and physical security is definitely a priority of most normal people. I think Republicans are out of touch, that they think that you can just kick everyone's ass and put them in a padded cage for 24 hours and that's going to save your society. That is also another form of lunacy.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Ramaswamy, what does the President Ramaswamy do about guns?
So
he said,
jump
Martha,
forward.
it's important to say that the president said, Donald Trump said, it's okay to suspend the Constitution. Now, the oath you take is to preserve, protect, and defend, not suspend. I will always stand up for our Constitution, regardless of the political pressure.
We have another question for you. We're going to get everyone in on this issue, but I have another question. Hold on, you will. All right, so President Trump's former vice president is on this stage tonight. He has faced hecklers on the campaign trail over his actions on January the 6th. On that day, the vice president moved forward with the certification of the election. So do you believe that Mike Pence did the right thing, Senator Scott? Do you believe he did the right thing?
Absolutely. He did the right thing. Number one. Number two, we should be asking ourselves a bigger question about the weaponization of the Department of Justice. When I'm president, the first thing I'll do is fire Merrick Garland. Second thing I'll do, fire Christopher Wray, because we need Lady Justice to wear a blindfold. Without that, no one has confidence in our justice system. 17% of Republicans have confidence in our Department of Justice. Here's why. we keep seeing not only the weaponization of the Department of Justice against political opponents, but also against parents who show up at school board meetings. They're called, under this DOJ, they're called domestic terrorists.
Firing Christopher
but that's not,
Wray,
but that's not
shut down the FBI. Actually have the courage to get it right.
Mr. Ramaswamy.
Let me finish my comments.
Yes.
Not only that, in addition to that, we see the SWAT team show up at pro-life activist homes with guns drawn because this DOJ uses their power, uses their authority, not just against political opponents, but against conservatives and conservative causes. It is time for a change in America, and I will bring that change to the greatest nation on God's green earth.
We have an important
But Governor
question still to
DeSantis, do you
answer.
believe that Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th?
So here's what we need to do. We need to end the weaponization of these federal agents.
But that's not
not answering
That's not the
it.
question.
I know, but here's the thing.
gonna answer the
This
question?
election is not about January 6th of 2021. It's about January 20th of 2025, when the next president is going to take office. I know what the Democrats would like to do. They want to talk about all these other issues, but we've got to focus on your future. We've got to focus on reversing the decline of our country.
Right.
I learned in the military, I was assigned with U.S. Navy SEALs in Iraq, that you focus on the mission above all else. You can't get distracted. So Republicans, we've got to look forward, and we've got to make sure that we're bringing the message that can win in
Vice
November
President Pence,
2021.
Did not answer the question. Did not answer the question.
Vice President Pence,
The mission of the President
what
of
do
the
you think,
United
Vice
States
President?
is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I think the American people deserve to know whether everyone on this stage agrees that I kept my oath to the Constitution that day. There's no more important duty. So answer the question.
I've answered this before.
So yes.
Why are we? Mike did his duty. I got no beef with him. But here's the thing: is this what we're going to be focusing on
I'm relieved.
going forward? The rehashing of this? I'll tell you,
Governor
the
DeSantis,
Democrats would love that, and they will win if we
Governor
let him get away
DeSantis,
with it. I'm not letting Biden hang out in the basement this time. We're going to run him ragged around this country, and we're going to hold him accountable.
Let me just say, Governor DeSantis, we spent an hour talking about policy.
that was effective.
Former President Trump is beating you by 30, 40 points in many polls. So it is a factor in the GOP primary. Governor Hutchinson, you did not raise your hand.
I did not raise my hand because there's an important issue we as a party have to face. And over a year ago, I said that Donald Trump was morally disqualified from being president again as a result of what happened on January 6th. More people are understanding the importance of that, including conservative legal scholars who says he may be disqualified under the 14th Amendment from being president again as a result of the insurrection. This is something that could disqualify him under our rules and under the Constitution. And so, obviously, I'm not going to support somebody who's been convicted of a serious felony or who is disqualified under our Constitution, and that's consistent with RNC rules. And I hope everybody would agree with me.
We're going to move on. No, we're going to.
Martha, can I answer the question?
Can I get in on that?
Okay, I'd like to answer.
I've already
Let him fight.
Vice President Pence.
All right, I'd like to answer the question you asked and not give a pre-canned speech. Mike Pence stood for the Constitution, and he deserves not grudging credit. He deserves our thanks as Americans for putting his oath of office and the Constitution of the United States before personal, political, and unfair pressure. And the argument that we need to have in this party before we can move on to the issues that Ron talked about is we have to dispense with the person who said that we need to suspend the Constitution to put forward his political career. Mike Pence said no, and he deserves credit for it.
Okay. Governor Haley, we haven't heard from you on this. Do you agree? Do you agree that Vice President Pence did the right thing that day or not?
I do think that Vice President Pence did the right thing, and I do think that we need to give him credit for that. But what I will also tell you is, look, I mean, when it comes to whether President Trump should serve or not, I trust the American people. Let them vote. Let them decide. But what they will tell you is that it is time for a new generational conservative leader. We have to look at the fact that 3/4 of Americans don't want a rematch between Trump and Biden. And we have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We can't win a general election that way.
Governor Bergen?
She's there with some tough medicine.
It's Governor Bergen opportunity.
Happy to answer the question. Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th. But I want to say, you started off the top of this hour saying we're going to talk about China, Ukraine, education.
We are.
China is the number one threat to our country. And every minute that these 8 candidates spend talking about the past instead about the future is time that it's just you know who loves it? Biden loves it, but China loves it when we're talking about the past.
Okay, as promised, we were going to spend a few questions on it, let people say what they wanted to say. And now, indeed, we are moving on to the subject of
all right. I loved it.
That was hot. Even if we miss a couple of minutes of the next segment, I don't care because I think that was probably the most important segment of the night.
I agree. And, credit for the Republican Party, right? You had a bunch of them stand up and basically stand with the Constitution and the peaceful transfer of power. I think that takes integrity. I don't like a lot of the people here, Mike Pence in particular. But seeing so many people reward him for doing the right thing, I think it's very American, and I respect it.
No, this is something that if I didn't watch tonight, I probably would do a bunch of masturbatory flexing about how Republicans don't care about the Republic and they've lost their principles and they lost their way and they're simping for somebody who has similar ambitions to Julius Caesar or Napoleon or whatever. And by the way, I would get tons of Twitter claps for that. I'd probably get a few hundred or a few thousand likes for a tweet or a comment or a video about that. But I do really, really, really respect the cojones of Chris Christie in particular, basically going against the booze, backing Pence, which by the way, he could throw him under the bus if he wanted to. Who cares? Pence is not a particularly popular fella. And he is saying, no, this is a republic. We care about our Constitution. The republic is bigger than one man, and I care that the rule of law is followed. There was silence and there were boos. But then, as people more and more confidently on that stage kept asserting that the republic was more important than one man, they got applause. Now, I'll be brief, but the Trumpers, they just want to move on, right? Who cares? Yeah. It's in the past. Don't worry about it. Let's just move on to the election. It's all a distraction. Blah 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 blah. But I think this is probably the most important conversation for the credibility of the Republican Party.
Yep, I agree. I really agree with that. You also, I don't want every time I come on stream we chat it to be Republican bashing, but it just seems so hypocritical to me, right? I've fully ceded that the Democrats are missing something on law and order, right? I do think it's an important issue. You see these crime rates rising. We've got to address it. To me, that carries through to, yes, Hunter Biden and former President Trump. I think if he's done illegal things and they can prove that in a court of law, I just do not believe this Republican storyline that the Department of Justice has become hyper weaponized or anti-Trump. I think if anything, they've been scared to prosecute him and hold him to the same standards that normal people would go to jail for. I know so many people with security clearance where if they did half the crazy shit he did with that stuff in Mar-a-Lago, they'd lose their clearance, they'd lose their job, and they'd be in jail right now. And I don't understand the logic of holding Republican or this guy to a different standard.
Yeah, I know we need to consume the content, but I used to be one of the biggest people who was banging the drum of Hillary Clinton is incompetent. She set up a private email server. She knew it was against these standards. She said, emails about unsecured information, blah, 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 blah. If I did that as a military service member, my clearance would be revoked. Therefore, she should basically be void from the presidency. Now compare that to knowingly taking top secret documentation to an unsecured location, keeping it in your toilet, letting your staff have access to it, and then just showing it to journalists because it's fun. And in the meeting where you're showing it to journalists, you say, I could have declassified this, but I didn't. So, you know, I could get in trouble for showing this to you, but who cares? You know, like it's wild. And by the way, I feel like we should put a pin on it so we can get back into the content. But realistically, I would love to talk about how I feel the DOJ has been weaponized, but I also agree that it is toothless. So let's talk about that later.
I would love to hear your arguments on
U.S. has committed nearly 77.
Can I speak on this issue? I was
You
kind of
did
involved.
you answered on this.
You did say
answer.
something.
Yeah.
I thought we thought you were done, but you
No, I
please.
wasn't done.
Well, Mike, why don't you say this? Join me in making a commitment that on day one you would pardon Donald Trump. I'm the only candidate on the stage who had the courage to actually say it. That is how we move our nation forward.
I don't know
and
why
turn the
you
page
assume
forward.
that
That's
Donald
exactly
Trump
right.
will be convicted of these crimes.
You should be able to make a commitment. The same justice system that was this
Vivek,
corrupt.
here's the difference between you and me.
Yeah, I'm not a professional politician. That's the difference. Who can answer a question?
I've actually given pardons when I was governor of the state of Indiana. It usually follows a finding of guilt and contrition by the individual that's been convicted. So, look, if I'm president of the United States, we'll give fair consideration to any pardon request. But if I may, you know, it's not about looking back at January 2021. It's about January 20th, 2017. I put my left hand on Ronald Reagan's Bible. I raised my right hand. And I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it ended with a prayer, so help me God. It was a promise that I made to the American people, but I also made it to my Heavenly Father. Every day for 4 years, I sought to keep that oath.
You know, it's just
Everyone
me.
on this
I hate it
stage
when
needs to make it
politicians
clear
bring
whether or
their
not they'll do the
religion
same.
into it. Oh, it
If
makes
they
me
earn this
cringe.
job and the confidence of the American people.
It's fine.
Now, look, I've made
Just
it clear.
not-
I
just
had
not
hoped
every
that
sentence.
the issues surrounding the 2020 election and the controversies around January 6th had not come to this, had not come to criminal proceedings. I would rather they had been resolved by the American people and the American people alone. But no one's above the law, and President Trump is entitled to the presumption of innocence that every American is entitled to.
Wrap it
and we
up.
will make sure and extend that to him. But the American people deserve to know that the president asked me in his request that I reject or
Can you
return
actually
votes
mute him?
unilaterally, power that no vice president in American history had ever.
There we go.
This guy needs some Adderall, man. He needs some voice lessons from Destiny. He needs to get in. He needs to make his points. He needs to get out. He's trying to do this thing where he's like, I'm the older man with gravitas, and when I take a long time to talk, you should listen to me because I'm being so slow. And it's like, bro, do an Adderall. Let's get going. Come on, we got places to be.
I couldn't agree more. I think what I think is really going to be interesting.
Although I do think they're moving on. Not to interrupt, but I do think they're moving on.
Yeah, we'll keep watching.
Of that, the specifics of that plan, is there anyone on stage who would not support the increase of more funding to Ukraine?
We
I
would
would not support it.
Europe needs to step up.
fuck off, you
I would
pussy.
have Europe step up and do their job.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you're
You got
saying
the
you would
cheers,
not
but you lost
too,
the
Governor
election.
DeSantis?
I will have Europe pull their weight.
But you
Right
would-
now, they're not doing
you
that.
would not support
and I think
more
we need
funding?
to do. And I think our support should be contingent on them doing it. And I would have support in China to be able to take China and do what we need to do with China.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine?
I would not. And I think that this is disastrous, that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States of America. We are driving Russia further into China's hands. The Russia-China alliance is the single greatest threat we face. And I find it offensive that we have professional politicians on the stage that will make a pilgrimage to Kyiv, to their Pope, Zelensky, without doing the same thing for people in Maui or the south side of Chicago or Kensington. I think that we have to put the interests of Americans first, secure our own border instead of somebody else's. And the reality is, this is also how we project strength by making America strong at home.
Thank you.
All right, we heard the names.
Let's
Governor
go
Christie
to-
first.
All right, look, I did go to Ukraine, and I went to Ukraine because I wanted to see for myself what Vladimir Putin's army was doing to the free Ukrainian people. And let me tell you, I want you all to look around this arena tonight and imagine that every one of these seats was filled. And if every one of them was filled, there would still be 2,500 more children outside to make over 20,000 who have been abducted, stolen, ripped from their mothers and fathers, and brought back to Russia to be programmed to fight their own families. They have gouged out people's eyes, cut off their ears, and shot people in the back of the head, men, and then gone into those homes and raped the daughters and the wives who were left as widows and orphans. This is the Vladimir Putin. This is the Vladimir Putin who Donald Trump called brilliant and a genius. If we don't stand up against this type of autocratic killing in the world, we will be next.
You were mentioned.
Governor Haley. We'll come back.
Vice President Pence was mentioned. You get 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, let me be clear. Anybody that thinks that we can't solve the problems here in the United States and be the leader of the free world has a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth.
That is incorrect.
We can do both, Vivek. We've done both. We've been the leader of the free world and the arsenal of democracy for years. The Reagan Doctrine years ago made it clear. We said, if you're willing to fight the communists on your soil, we'll give you the means to fight them there so our troops don't have to fight them. Vivek, if we do the giveaway that you want to give to Putin to give him his land, it's not going to be too long before he rolls across a NATO border, and frankly, our men and women of our armed forces are going to have to go and fight him. I want to let the Ukrainians fight and drive Putin and the Russians back out into Russia.
I want to just briefly address Pence, Vice President Pence. I have a newsflash. The USSR does not exist anymore. It fell back in 1990.
Did I say
the real
USSR?
threat? You talked about the communists, and the real communists that we have to address right now.
Do you not have any idea what Vladimir Putin's aims are?
You already spoke. Now I actually have something to say.
Vladimir Putin has been saying he wants to reestablish the old Soviet sphere
You've made
of
your point,
influence.
Vice President.
Vice President Pence.
I'm sorry if I
I'm
insulted
loving
him by
this beat
calling him
down.
a
This is
communist.
great.
He is a dictator and a murderer, and the United States of America needs to stand against authoritarianism.
Mr. Ramaswamy, 30 seconds.
Respond. The real threat we face today is communist China, and we are driving Russia further into China's arms. The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest threat we face. Nobody in either political party is talking about it, and I am the only non-neocon on this stage who will keep us out of war.
Mr. Vice President, we can't hear. Mr. Vice President,
is to give Russia everything they've got.
Mr. Vice President,
give them a promise that Ukraine will never be in NATO, and then somehow
Mr. Vice President,
China will not think about taking Taiwan. We achieve peace through strength.
Mr. Vice President,
America needs to stand for freedom.
I can't believe my Pence. This is terrible. This is terrible.
Are you kidding? Why is it terrible?
This guy, it's like, I'm 100% with him on NatSec in this particular instance. He's just said so much horrible stuff about,
Everything
gay
else?
people, and it's everything else. So, but he's dead on here. I mean, why? I'm old enough to remember in
Christie's
the
got
Republican
balls.
Party, y'all were 100% the NatSec heroes, right? Taking world stage politics seriously. I remember George Bush, the first one, like there was a serious concern in the Republican Party about national security and alliances with other country. And today it feels like this sickness is taking over the Republican Party where so many people want us to withdraw from the world stage. It is so sad to see.
It is. Okay, I'll explain it. And
Sure.
This is probably, I know they're probably going fire, and man, I am a fan of Vivek. I borderline feel like we should have done this when the debates were over. That way we could catch the whole thing and do it all. But obviously this is going to be a lot of content as all, and we're catching the highlights anyways. So the reason why Vivek is popular, and I'll try to be brief, but there's so much here to unpack. The reason why he's popular is because he's articulating the American resentment at being the world police. And while you're right that during the 80s and the 90s and the early thousands, the American right was very muscular, very internationalist, et cetera, what happened was there is an entire generation of working class and middle class Americans who have what's the past tense? Anyways, they've taken on the burden of America's international security and the commercial interests that we are aligned with, and we've had tens of thousands of young men die, and we've had trillions of dollars spent, and we lost both wars that we were involved in. We lost half of Iraq within 2 years. We lost Afghanistan in 11 days. And so a lot of Americans say, a lot of military-aged men are saying, why the fuck am I going to go die for Raytheon? Why am I going to go die for American oil security? Why am I going to go die so, some, no offense, progressive in San Francisco can buy a Funko Pop from Japan for $19.95? I don't give a flying fuck about whether or not people can buy Funko Pops. So as a result, there's an entire undercurrent of resentment from the fighting class that basically says, fuck you and your military adventurism. It's not something that I'm signing my sons up for. It's not something that I'm signing up for again. And unless you prioritize the actual nation state that I am a part of, you can go fuck yourself. And so that's why there's people applauding Vivek. Now, I think it's a wrong instinct. I'll wrap it up. I think it's a totally incorrect instinct, but I understand it.
No, I understand that too. It's a lot of the reason why I protested the Iraq war, like at every single opportunity. I actually ended up on the terrorist watch list one time, eventually at the Bush administration, because I was out there protesting him so damn much, like obsessively every single weekend. I had friends die in that war. I 100% get that. It's just as a policy, and maybe Biden has not done a good job communicating this, but we are literally taking surplus weapons that we have to maintain and do all this stuff with that we're going to deprecate anyway, and it costs us a ton of money, and we're putting them to good use over there. So they can literally fight. So we don't have to get NATO engaged in some huge like cross-continent land battle, right? So I understand what you're saying, but just as a policy, it's absolutely insane to think that like Vladimir Putin is going to back off after he takes over Ukraine. He's not. He's going to keep pushing that border.
I'm going to start writing down topics that we have to take on. So we have weaponization of the DOJ, and we have
abortion,
Republican perspectives on global security. And then let's get back into the content before it moves on.
I love it.
Okay, here we go.
I think we need to establish some ground rules
When we hear this bell, that means your time's done.
We're done.
So, Mr. Vice President, we appreciate your aggressiveness here. 30 seconds is 30 seconds. Mr. Ramaswamy, you were mentioned. You get 30 seconds.
So the reality is that today, Ukraine is not a priority for the United States of America. And I think that the same people who took us into the Iraq War, the same people who took us into the Vietnam War, you cannot end it. You cannot start another no-win war. And I do not want to get to the point where we're sending our military resources abroad when we could be better using them here at home to protect our own borders, protect the homeland.
All right.
That will be my top priority in foreign policy.
I think we gave you more than the 30 seconds in the rebut. So I do want to get to some other people because everybody, we respect everybody's time here. So Governor Haley, you did not raise your hand, meaning that you would support more funding for the Ukraine war. You have said of Governor DeSantis that you didn't appreciate it when he initially called it a territorial dispute. Why?
First of all, the American president needs to have moral clarity. They need to know the difference between right and wrong. They need to know the difference between good and evil. Right. When you look at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, here you have a pro-American country that was invaded by a thug. So when you want to talk about what has been given to Ukraine, less than 3.5% of our defense budget has been given to Ukraine. If you look at the percentages per GDP, 11 of the European countries have given more than the U.S. But what's really important is go back to when China and Russia held hands, shook hands before the Olympics, and named themselves unlimited partners. A win for Russia is a win for China. We have to know that. Ukraine is the first line of defense for us. And the problem that Vivek doesn't understand is he wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. You don't do that to friends. What you do instead is you have the backs of your friends. Ukraine is the front line of defense. Putin has said, once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war. We're trying to prevent war. Look at what Putin did today. He killed Prigozhin. When I was at the UN, the
Shut the
Russian
fuck
ambassador
up.
suddenly died. This guy is a murderer,
Prigozhin's dead?
and you are choosing
Yeah.
a murderer over
Yeah,
over
you guys plane shot down by Russia. It's great.
First of all, Mr.
Love it when
Ramaswamy, you have
bad
30
things
seconds.
happen to
Mr.
bad
DeSantis,
You know,
Governor
Nikki, I wish you
DeSantis.
well in your future career on the boards of Lockheed and Raytheon.
You know, I'm not on
but
the
the fact
boards
of the matter,
Lockheed and Raytheon, and you know, you
Boeing
have
came
put
off of it,
down
but you've been pushing this
everybody on
lie.
the stage,
You've been pushing
but
this
you know
lie
what?
all week,
You want
Nikki.
to go and defund Israel? You want to
Okay,
give
let me
Taiwan
address
to
that.
China?
I'm glad you brought that up.
You want to go and give
I'm going to
Ukraine
address
Russia?
each of those right now. This is the false.
They're doing some damage.
Politician. There you have
Under
it.
your watch,
So
you
the
will make
reality is,
America less safe. You have no
Let me-
foreign policy experience, and it shows.
and you know what?
It
The
shows.
foreign policy experience
Yes.
that you all have shows in the pointless wars.
You have
that
no
you
foreign
address
policy
that.
experience in the
So
shows.
our relationship with Israel will never be stronger than by the end of my first term. But it's not a client relationship. It is a friendship. And you know what friends do? Friends help each other stand on their own 2 feet. So I will lead Abraham Accords 2.0. I will partner with Israel to make sure Iran never is nuclear armed. But you know what I love about Israel? And I've been there probably in the last 10 years more than most people on this stage. You know what I love about them? I love their border policies. I love their tough on crime policies. I love that they have a national identity and an iron dome to protect their homeland. And so, yes, I want to learn from the friends that we're supporting. And what puzzles
you
me
wanna cut the
is, I want to learn from those and apply those to protect our homeland,
It's
Nikki.
not that Israel
That is
needs
the answer.
America.
we move
America
on?
needs Israel.
Okay,
They
Governor
are the front
DeSantis.
line of
Governor
defense.
DeSantis, you were mentioned in the territorial dispute. Not only
No, it's not a
So
territorial
as
dispute
President
either.
of the United States, your first obligation is to defend our country and its people. And that means you're sending all this money, but you're not doing what we need to do to secure our own border. We have tens of thousands of people
We can
who
do
are
both
being
at the
killed because,
same
well, we're
time.
not handling
And
both.
we can do
And so
both
I am
at the
going to
same
declare it a
time.
national emergency. I'm not going to send troops to Ukraine, but I am going to send them to our southern border. When these drug pushers are bringing fentanyl across the border, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to use force, and we're going to leave them stone cold dead.
we're actually going to move on to China. We're going to talk.
All right. I got a lot of stuff. What
Getting
are you
spicy.
thinking? Yes.
Yeah, you go first because I could easily rant for the next 3 to 5 minutes.
I mean, I love seeing Nikki Haley beat that child down. I love it. Like, he obviously doesn't know anything that he's talking about. I think there is a discussion to be had about what America's relationship with Israel is. I do think that. And I think there's this false choice out there that just because
I'll write that down.
you have an issue with someone's government that you dislike their people, right? Like, I don't agree with the foreign policy of the Israel government right now. I think it's fringe right. I think it's committing some violence against Palestinians. It's very, very hard to stomach. Yeah, I think the United States has a role in where we go from here, right? But just coming back to the Russia-China stuff, he's talking about this stuff like it's so binary and it's so simple. And it's just not. It's crazy. What's your read on that?
Yeah, so I kind of earlier, I think I was identifying the resentment of the working class and middle class who has to fight these wars, but I do agree that he has a very simplistic child view on geopolitics that it wouldn't survive a national security defense meeting.
No.
A lot of people, they think, especially when they're running for politics, I think Obama was guilty of this. They think that they're going to get elected and they're going to be able to drive the United States of America like a speedboat, but it's not a speedboat. It's an oil tanker. And so as a result, any change that you want to make is going to be very slow. It's going to be very incremental. It's going to be in partnership with 10,000 different agencies, 10,000 different, brain people, 10,000 funders, 10,000 fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. So just pretending that we're going to unilaterally withdraw from NATO like Trump did, or we're just going to give Ukraine to Russia or something like that. That's not going to last 30 seconds. So it feels good. It feels good to go into the room of all these geopolitical strategists who have led us into forever wars for the past century and to say, screw you, it is simple. We're not going to let Americans die overseas for other people's countries. We're not going to spend billions and trillions of dollars on other people's security, and we're going to secure our own border. Screw you, it is that simple. That feels good. It's just stupid. So, but But like we could do both. That's what I liked about Pence is we can secure our border and we can support our allies and we can make sure that the international trade relations that we are currently reliant on as a geopolitical hegemonic power, we can make sure that all of this works. We've done it for centuries now.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I also think Democrats, they brought up the border several times in that whole thing. I think Democrats have really allowed the Republican to define us on here. And I do think there are a few crazies. I don't necessarily think they're elected officials that are out there and genuinely want open borders and do not support secure border policy. And I'm like, did you people not read about the nuke plot that was stopped during the Bush administration where people are like smuggling fissile material into the United States to set off a dirty bomb, and that got intercepted at our borders? Like, of course, any nation has enemies. The United States has a lot of enemies, right? Of course you need a secure border, and we need to revamp immigration and give people a pathway to citizenship, of course. But I feel like we've ceded all this ground to the Republican Party by not just talking about the need to secure that border. And I think it's tremendously disappointing.
I feel like I know we need to get back into the content, but I feel like I need to mature my talking points for who I'm talking to, because I have the exact opposite policy of Vivek and of the Republicans. I don't want to secure the border. I want to annex Mexico and Canada. I want to go all the way down to the Panama Canal. I want 10 new states. I want to, the Central and South American, or the Central Americans, they get access to the United States. We get a brand new free trade zone. We can incorporate policy and drug law. We can fight the cartels. Think of all the benefits that we could have. And then on top of that, you can't complain about our porous border, because now our border, instead of being the Rio Grande and a whole bunch of Arizonan desert, now it's only like, if it's the Panama Canal, and as long as you have a good Coast Guard, you can control it very easily.
I think it would have the national security implications of stopping some very poor policy that we've been running in Latin America. So we'll table that for another discussion.
Okay.
Talk about
to Ukraine. We're a poor nation, indebted nation.
Just
They're not giving it back to debt. And I think it was a missed opportunity.
It's over.
Wait, is that over, or is that a break?
That exchange on foreign
I
policy.
don't know. We will. Let's see. It's only 10:30. I can't. Oh, they're coming back. Good.
Yeah. I was about to say just mute him until they start talking again. But can you mute it instead of turn it down? Because
sorry.
I have a mild.
There we go.
I don't have ADD as bad as everybody else, but I do have a little bit of ADD. But we can just joke for a little bit while they're getting some water. And I'll get some water when they come back. So. No, but like I'm joking, of course, but like I'll put that in there for like American hegemony. Like I do think that it's kind of ridiculous that we have a porous border with all these poor states, with people that we have humanitarian concerns for, but we constantly meddle in their politics, but they're also like inconceivably corrupt and violent and all that kind of stuff. And like that's the thing is like what is it? I have I have like a friend who has family members or whatever from Mexico. And one of their family members was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going back to Mexico to get into the family business." And we're like, "Oh yeah, what's the family business?" And he's like, "Oh, my family is, a part of the cartel, so I'm running for politics." And it's like, so think about like how casual of a sentence that is to be like, yeah, like my family is connected to like multimillionaire and billionaire, drug people. And so they want to have buy-in into local politics. So I'm running for a small municipality so I can bend political favor towards the cartels.
I will tell you sometime about Frank's, my husband, for everyone out there, his family member that got thrown in jail for the Communist Party when they were cracking down on corruption because he was so rich and made so much money from that. It's a whole nother discussion.
Ability to fix this crisis as we see it.
Absolutely. The decline in education is one of the major reasons why our country is in decline. We need education in this country, not indoctrination in this country. And in Florida, we stood up for what was right. First, we had schools open during COVID, and a lot of the problems that we've seen are because these lockdown states lock their kids out of school for a year and a half. That was wrong. We stood up. I took a lot of fire for that. I was pilloried by the media, but I stood for our kids. And as president, I'll stand for you and your kids as well. But we have to make sure that what our schools are doing is focusing on solid academics. In Florida, we eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. We eliminated gender ideology from our K through 12 schools. And we have elevated the importance of American civics and teaching our kids about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. As president, I'm going to lead an effort to increase civic understanding and knowledge of our Constitution. We cannot be graduating students that don't have any foundation in what it means to be an American.
Mr. Ramaswamy, Mr. Ramaswamy, hold on, Senator Scott. You've said that the Department of Education, the FBI, the ATF, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the IRS, the Department of Commerce, many of these should not exist.
That's correct.
So to the education question, how would you deal with the crisis?
So look, we have a crisis of achievement. Let's shut down the head of the snake, the Department of Education. Take that $80 billion, put it in the hands of parents across this country. This is the civil rights issue of our time. Allow any parent to choose where they send their kids to school. End the teachers' unions at the local level to allow public schools to compete. And then revive our national identity where every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that, frankly, every immigrant, including my mother, had to pass in order to become a citizen of this country. And the fact of the matter is, look, there's a part of education policy that also rests with the family. I didn't grow up in money, but you know the word privilege gets used a lot? Well, you know what? I did have the ultimate privilege of 2 parents in the house with a focus on educational achievement. And I want every kid to enjoy that. So part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness. And I think that goes hand in glove with the education crisis as well, because we have to remember education starts with the family, and the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
Governor Haley has said that biological boys playing in girls' sports is the women's issue of our time. You said that even though you signed a ban on this in North Dakota, that there hadn't been one instance where it was actually needed. Are you saying that you think that too much is made of this issue?
No, I'm saying in North Dakota, we made a priority of protecting women's sports, and we've done that in our state. But I would absolutely do that. But I do think when we start talking about education and we think that we're going to have a federal government one size fits all, we're just completely losing track of the fact that education differs by state. Some school districts are doing a fantastic job, some less so. But the idea that every school district, state, and every teacher is somehow indoctrinating people is just false. You know, when I was building a company from scratch, you know, with small town kids, and we went, you know, grew up in a town of 300, but we built a global company in 132 countries with over 100,000 customers. We listened to those customers. We spent time with them. We talked to them. We did that. And as governor, well, education is one of the biggest part of a state budget. So as a governor, I shadow a student. The night before I find out the student finds out, I'm going to go to every class with them. I don't sit and lecture school districts how to do it. I go and see the experience. And there's a lot of things that have to change. But what needs to change in education is it's innovation. We're doing it the same way we did it 50 years ago with innovation, not regulation. I would get rid of the Department of Education. I would give block grants to schools, but I'd give them on merit based on who's doing the most innovative. I just got done holding the 7th annual Governor's Conference on Innovation Education. You should see what the people are doing when you cut loose the red tape, get the burden off their back. They care. Teachers in this country, the vast majority of them care about those kids. They're working in low-paying jobs, and they're fighting for those kids and their families.
Governor Haley, you said that this is the women's issue of our time.
I'll try to be brief just so we don't miss anything. Vivek, or whatever that guy's name is, he's remind me, I'm such a jerk for not remembering his name. Come on, the Asian guy who wanted to do UBI.
Oh yeah, Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang. So Vivek, you know, they're both Asian, so I'm being racist, of course. But I think that this is the gentleman who's going to have all the wild, crazy ideas, and he's not actually going to win, and he's not actually going to be like that politically impactful in the primary or the general. But he's going to introduce all of the crazy ideas that he's trying to germinate in the American consciousness. That's my read.
I think I've never thought of that before, but I think you're dead on because he's got charisma, and Andrew Yang definitely he got some mojo in the party for a really good idea and for a really good reason. I think you're absolutely dead on with that assessment. Kind of, you've got kids and I don't. Kind of, where do you fall on the kind of war on the Department of Education side of things?
This was totally, for conservatives in particular, this is going to be a total DeSantis dub. As a matter of fact, I don't think he fumbled a single time. I don't think there was a single word in there that a conservative or a Republican would take issue with. When they say CRT, conservatives don't hear history classes that are nuanced. They hear progressive anti-American education. When they're talking about, transgender ideology in schools, they don't hear like the discussion about whether or not trans people exist. What they hear is teaching children that they can be cloud gender and shit. So as a result,
I don't even know what cloud gender is. I guess I'm behind on the discourse.
Yeah, you got to catch up.
I got to get in right here in the group chats.
Yeah, so I have one more main thing. So I think it's going to be a total dub for DeSantis from a conservative perspective. Also, I think that he is at his strongest when he is flexing his gubernatorial credentials. When he's trying to be a rhetorician, when he's trying to face Trump, when he's trying to do this, when he's trying to do that, he feels fake, he feels phony, he feels talking points, he feels all that kind of crap. Whereas whenever he's actually talking about policy that he implemented that was popular with his base, he actually seems to be in his element. And so if I was giving his team feedback on how to continue the debates, flex on what you did in the past that parallels into the future. How are you going to run the country the way you ran Florida? That might be popular or not popular with Democrats and progressives. It will be popular with Republicans.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
First, I'll tell you, as a parent, the one thing you want is for your child to have a better life than you did. And we can talk about all of these things, and there's a lot of crazy woke things happening in schools, but we've got to get these kids reading. If a child can't read by 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we need to make sure we bring in reading remediation all over this country. We need transparency in the classroom because parents should never have to wonder what's being said or taught to their children in the classroom. Parents need to be deciding which schools their kids go to because they know best. And let's put vocational classes back into the high.
Yeah, what's up?
So I want to get feedback. I know we're not going to be instantaneously insanely popular overnight, but if I was giving feedback, the governor who keeps referencing republicanism and actual constitutionalism, he is not on Twitter enough. Vivek is on Twitter too much. Haley is a policy wonk, which is beautiful. I'm a policy wonk. I want to hear somebody have very interested, nuanced discussions about what policies they want to implement and how to implement them. If we just went way too myopic for a very broad question. And so I've seen her do this dozens of times. If I was like her rhetorical coach or whatever, I would say, I love you. You're smart. I think you're so passionate. I think you're so good. You gotta broad scale this or nobody's going to know what the fuck you're talking about.
I really agree with that. I also, obviously, out of everyone on the stage, I understand Haley the most because, when you're a woman in a professional environment like this, you spend so much time, just trying to get taken seriously, right? And it's why, you saw this with Hillary Clinton as well, where she was most comfortable when she was talking about, the minutia of policy and how to get there, right? I do this myself in my own public, persona. So I completely agree with you, is this trap that you fall into because it really is that old saying, right? Men walk into a situation and are assumed competent until proven otherwise. With women, it's the exact opposite. But it's also she's done enough at this point. I feel like she can kind of let go of that a little bit. She's on that stage.
Yeah, and we should get back into the content just so we're not missing anything. But what I would say is, this is my rhetorical advice for them, is go broad scale, play to the audience. You're not just talking to policy wonks, you're talking to normies as well.
Yeah. You're trying to carve a path for the Republican Party. That's the main thing people want to hear from you tonight.
And I will tell you, I want to address Vice President Pence's comment. I think we do need somebody of a different generation to lead this nation forward. Look at the way I've run this campaign. Going to the south side of Chicago, to Kensington, in the middle of Philadelphia, where traditional Republican candidates don't go. We have an opportunity to build a multi-ethnic, working-class majority to deliver a landslide, and I think I'm the only candidate in this race, young or old, black or white, to bring all of those voters along to deliver a Reagan 1980 revolution. We're going to do it in 2024.
Same question to you.
In a presidential election until
I will answer that. I will answer that.
30 seconds.
30-second quick answer.
You guys need to get control of this debate.
Everybody's going to get a chance to get
Listen,
control
we're getting
of this
control of the debate. This is a lightning round, not rolling thunder. Governor Hutchinson, you have 30 seconds on the same question.
On education, first of all, look at Arkansas. We have to compete with China. I built computer science education. We led the nation in computer science education, going from 1,100 students to 23,000 students taking it.
Do Republicans really care about China as an issue in your estimation? It's really, it's not that I don't disagree. It's not that I don't agree it is a valid concern. It's just we don't talk about it to this degree on the left.
Literally. So we need a boogeyman. We need a Russia. Russia is already Russia, so we need another enemy. China is a good enemy, but at the same time, I think most Americans don't give a flying fudge about this. They would literally take the microchip factories out of Taiwan. They would open up immigration from Taiwan and Hong Kong and say, hey, if you're a smart Chinese person, you want to come to the United States, you got an instant visa, and then they would give Taiwan to China. I don't think most Republicans give a flying fudge about some random island in the, I don't even know if it's in the Indian Ocean or the Pacific, but they don't care about the territory of Taiwan. They care about smart people manufacturing microchips.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, healthy dose of racism, too. So
is to break the backs of the teachers' unions. They are standing in the doorhouse of our kids.
I think we are never going to see Tim Scott
into
again
failing
after
schools
tonight.
and locking them out of the greatest future they could have.
He might be the minority.
As President, Governor DeSantis,
one.
would you support some mandatory military service for all Americans?
I think it should be voluntary. I'm somebody that volunteered to serve, inspired by September 11th, and I deployed to Iraq alongside U.S. Navy SEALs in places like Fallujah, Ramadi, and it's something that I think has taught me, when you go in that type of environment, anything you have, your personal agenda, you check it at the door. You go there, and it's about focusing on the mission above all else, and guys come together and they get it done, and that's how I would view being the president of the United States. It's not about me. It's not about all these other side issues. My sole focus will be on your future and reversing this country's decline.
Okay, now for something a little out of this world, and this is for you, Governor Christie. Do you believe that the recent spike in UFO encounters...
I get the UFO question?
Yeah, you do.
Come on,
there
man.
You go. But, okay, we've been hearing a lot of testimony in Congress, and people are taking this a lot more seriously. And we're hearing that, there are things going on that people aren't aware of. So, if you were president, Governor Christie, would you level with the American people about what the government knows about these possible encounters?
Martha, and especially coming from a woman from New Jersey, I think it's horrible that just because I'm from New Jersey, you asked me about unidentified flying objects and Martians. We're different, but we're not that different. Of course, the job of the President of the United States is to level with the American people about everything. The job of the President of the United States is to stand for truth.
He's right.
The job of the President of the United States is to be a role model for our children and our grandchildren. And so whether it was UFOs or this problem of education, and Tim's right, by the way, and I started this in 2010 by going right after the teachers' unions in New Jersey and drove them down to an all-time low popularity rating because they were putting themselves before our kids. That is the biggest threat to our country, not UFOs.
Okay. Well, coming up, we've got closing arguments, plus right after the debate, Hannity is live from the spin room right here in the Fiserv Forum.
I don't know. I think...
No, I don't need to watch Hannity. I'll have a cardiovascular event if I watch him.
I think we still got
die before him.
Yeah,
we still got closing arguments.
Well, the lightning round turned into the...
No, I was just going to say how, like, out of touch everything seems here. I mean, granted, I'm looking at it from a broader electorate point of view, and I'm thinking about who here could potentially win the general, right?
It's DeSantis. It is. But he's got to clean up his shit. He can't be on coke in weird, gritting his teeth, looking like Homelander while people are asking him questions, sweating profusely into his fake tan. He can't be bombing questions. He can't be awkwardly hugging people. He can't be leaving conversations mid-conversation. These things are clips, right? They are not indications of his actual competence or personality or anything like that. But these are viral clips specifically designed to make him look like a weird politics autist. And by the way,
he is weird. He is weird.
Which is fine. But do you know what you do? You don't run away from that and become self-conscious and allow people to tear you apart. You lean into it. And you become the belovable weirdo political autist who is competent and brought results for your people. And by the way, so this is why I'm loving Christie so much tonight. Christie, he's loose. He's fun. He's engaging. He's bringing out things that are unpopular but are well thought out and well reasoned. He's going against the crowd in a way that is then they're bullying him at first and they're applauding by the time he's done talking. That is a huge talent. And by the way, I would absolutely back Chris Christie, except for one fact. There's a picture of him on the internet where he has a small carton of M&Ms and he has a large bag of M&Ms. And he's taking the small bag of M&Ms and he's putting it into the large bag of M&Ms. And you can't talk about self-control and locking people up for marijuana when you can't control how much candy you're eating by doing ridiculous weirdo shit like that.
That's fair. That is very disqualifying. No, I agree. I agree with that. I think it's really tough to watch this tonight and be like Team Mike Pence. I mean, put a gun to my head about which of these people I would want as president. I mean, God forbid, because he would like destroy all of my rights. But I feel like he's at least like you can tell he's served enough time in the vice presidency to like understand a bit more about how the world works as opposed to Vivek. But at the same time, like just being straight with you, I think all of these people sound crazy out of touch to a broader electorate. I'm not hearing like stuff about how people are going to pay their groceries or get housing costs down. It just seems like all this Republican greatest hits that I really think seem out of touch to a lot of people.
See, this is what's so funny. I agree with you to a certain extent. That if you talk to people about how are you going to make their lives easier? How are you going to make sure they can pay their bills? How are you going to make sure that their kids get a good education? How are you going to make sure that they have, opportunities for jobs? How are you going to make sure that their kids don't die in forever wars? How are you going to make sure, like all the things that we're talking about? I think that will resonate with the base more. But the truth is, I hate to say it, I love Chud Logic so much. People want blood and guts and sex. And violence and excitement, and they want escapism. And by the way, we're kind of doing like like a commentator UFC fighter kind of analysis kind of thing. But they're doing that on Fox News right now.
Yeah,
we're worse than we are. They have better sets, but they've hired a bunch of ignoramuses who have made $500,000 their entire lives, who have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They've been in the Beltway sniffing their own farts for so long that they have no idea what they're talking about. But this is entertainment now. So it is politics, it is policy, but it's also entertainment.
I agree with you. I think where I differ is I think that works for the political class. I think people like you and I that get high on this stuff and follow it all the time, you have like really, really strong opinions about all this shit. When I ran for Congress, I ran into people at Home Depot that could barely tell me what the vice president's name was, right? And it's just, that's most people. And I understand for a Republican primary, you've got to go in, you've got to play to the base, you've got to focus on A, B, and C. Like, we're going to do it on our own, right? There's going to be a lot of stuff about gay policy, LGBT policy, people of color. Like, we will go right into the same issues that our base cares about. I just think at the end of the day, I do believe the Democratic Party is going to be able to pivot more effectively to making people feel like we're actually invested in, like, improving their lives. I think the Republicans are going to be so smeared with the attacks on birth control and all this other stuff that I think it's going to really do some damage.
We'll see. I think they're back, but let's do kind of like an autopsy when they're done.
That number has now plummeted to just 39%. In his pitch to get to the Oval Office, President Reagan called America the shining city on a hill, a beacon of hope and optimism.
So in your closing statement tonight, please tell American voters why you are the person who can inspire this nation to a better day. These are 45 seconds, and we begin with Governor Burgum.
I understand why America's hurting. Biden's inflation is choking us. I grew up in a small town. My dad died when I was a freshman in high school. My mom, widow of 3, went back to work. Every job I had growing up was one where I took a shower at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day. Our cities are less safe because of the fentanyl pouring into this country. Our economy is being crushed by Biden's energy policies, which are raising the cost of every product you buy, not just the gasoline at the pump.
For a message of hope.
One thing that I'll do as president, I'll secure the border. I'll get this economy sprinting, not crawling like it is right now. And I would say that other thing is for sure, when I'm on a horseback in the Badlands of North Dakota, it looks like the horizon is just limitless. And when you can almost see beyond that horizon, you can see that this great country, our future is unlimited. But we've got to focus on innovation, not regulation. We've got to cut the red tape. We've got to drive ourselves forward. The way we win the Cold War with China is by growing our economy and through innovation. And as president, I will bring out the best of America. I will improve every American life.
Well, we hope you're back on your horse soon, Governor.
He's based,
Governor Hutchinson,
but he's so wrong.
I agree.
And it's in trouble because of failed leadership. And the solution is not 4 more years of Joseph Biden. The solution is not 4 more years of Donald Trump. The solution is new leadership.
I think he went to the same eye plastic surgeon that Biden did. Like it looked exactly the same.
His number one responsibility is to bring out the best of our people. That's what Ronald Reagan did. And he did it with optimism and hope for our country, with a consistent conservatism. That's exactly what I bring. As president, I'll bring out the best of America in terms of individual responsibility, building our economy, in terms of securing our border, enforcing the rule of law. I'll bring out the best of America in terms of our national character, our faith, and our hope for the future. Join in this fight, asa2024.com.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Thank you. I was a disillusioned young man growing up in a single-parent household, mired in poverty. I wondered if the American dream was real for a kid like me. I can stand before you today and say the dream is alive, it is well, and it is healthy. I had the good fortune of a mom who works 16-hour days, making sure we have food on our tables. She taught me that if you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men. I'm Tim Scott. I'm asking you for your vote. And if you're in Iowa, I'm asking you to caucus for me. You can go to votetimscott.com.
I just think most people don't want to hear this bootstrap stuff. I really don't. I think most people feel like they're getting shafted.
Yes.
Look, everybody on this stage wants to be the next president of the United States. And the only way that's going to happen is if we beat Joe Biden. I'm the only one on this stage who's ever beaten a Democratic incumbent in an election. I did it in a deep blue state, being outspent 3-1. Beating a Democratic incumbent is not easy. The last Democratic incumbent president who was defeated was Jimmy Carter. And he was defeated by a conservative governor from a blue state who knew how to get results, who stood for the truth, who cared about accountability, and stood strong and hard against waste. Those are the very things that I did in my 8 years as governor of New Jersey, and it's exactly what I'll do as president of the United States. Believe me, the Democrats want some other nominee who's never beaten a Democratic incumbent. I'm the one who can win this race, and if you give me the chance, I will restore our country by winning it.
Thank you.
Do you think Chris Christie is going to win?
No, but I like him.
Yeah, I respect it.
I dropped my husband, Michael, a combat veteran from Afghanistan,
Fuck me.
off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. If they are willing to protect us from there, we should be willing to fight for America here. I will beat Joe Biden, and he knows that. I will strengthen our economy, and we'll bring this inflation down. We will put transparency in the classroom. We will secure our borders. We will have the backs of our law enforcement, and we will make sure we have a strong national security. And once again, we will make sure we have an America that is strong and proud. We have a country to save. Join us. Go to NikkiHaley.com, and let's get it done.
Oh, boy.
Vice President Pence.
She's not going to win America.
Yeah, I respect it.
Thank you, Brad and Martha, for this evening. It's an honor to be here.
If he tells a personal story, I'm going to kill
Joe
myself.
Biden has weakened America at home and abroad.
Oh, thank God.
The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, their war on energy,
scheduled by your
runaway
president.
spending that launched the worst inflation in 40 years, a crisis at our southern border, an assault on our values and liberties. And the American people have had enough. But I know we can bring it back. But different times call for different leadership. The Republican Party owes the American people a choice. Proven leadership at the national level that knows how to move a conservative agenda forward. We proved in the Trump-Pence years you can turn this country around faster than you can imagine. And I have faith we will again. Because I have faith in the American people. The good, decent, hardworking, faith-filled, idealistic people of this country. And I have faith that God is not done with America yet. And if we will renew our faith in one another and renew our faith in Him, who has ever guided this nation since we arrived on these wilderness shores, I know the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come.
Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy.
It's not risky.
I was born in 1985, and I grew up into a generation where
he's
we were
doing it
taught
too.
to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion in 1776. And this is our moment to revive those common ideals. God is real. There are 2 genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight. Thank you.
He's
Governor DeSantis.
He's the one person that doesn't sound descriptive.
He's not going to win. He's going to fucking kill.
Governor?
Yeah.
This is our time for choosing. We will send Joe Biden back to his basement, and we will reverse the decline of this country. I'm a blue-collar kid. I work minimum wage jobs to be able to make ends meet. I understand the importance of the American dream, and I know how that's slipped away from so many millions of Americans. We'll restore it. I'm a veteran who served in Iraq. I know what it means to put service above self. I'm also a dad and a husband to 6'5" and 3-year-old. I understand the importance of protecting parents' rights and the well-being of our children. In Florida, we showed it could be done. I made promises, and I delivered on all of those promises. 2024 is make or break. We're not getting a mulligan, no excuses. I will get the job done, and as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you all.
There you go. Well, we want to say thank you. Thank you to all the candidates on the stage tonight, and thank you to Milwaukee.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you on the campaign trail from debates to primaries to the general election and the conventions before that. Thanks for joining us. Sean Hannity from the Spin Room.
All right, fuck him.
So, yeah, it just sounds really out of touch to my ears. I mean, maybe we disagree on that, but it's how I feel.
No, I think we're talking about to whom are we speaking?
Fair.
I think that right now they're speaking exclusively to fundraisers. They're speaking exclusively to Republicans who are going to vote in the primaries. I'm in Florida, where if you do not register as a Republican, you do not get to vote in the primary as an independent. So basically, like, they are exclusively talking to Republicans, conservatives, and libertarians. That is the only people they're talking to, and they're looking for fundraisers. So they're trying to dial in their speeches and their talking points and their charisma and their recruitment specifically for that narrow branch, and then they're going to open it up when they get into the general. I'll shut up. But for my takeaways, I love Christie. I don't think he's going to win. I like Nikki Haley. She's a policy wonk. She's too focused on policy. She's not macro picturing it. She's not going to be popular as a result.
She's running for vice president, though. That's why she was very measured in going against Trump.
Sure. I'm sure she is, actually. I'm sure she is hedging her bets. Vivek is probably going to stay in this, not because he's going to win or because he's going to be like the competent choice that the establishment wants and all that kind of stuff. He's just charismatic. He's fun. He's witty. He's weird. He brings fiery moments, all that kind of stuff. People are going to want to see him again. So they might not want him for president, but they do want him to take the fire to other Republican candidates.
I agree.
I think that Pence was kind of a safe snooze fest, to be honest. Like he delivered all the points, he delivered it with gravitas, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it was the same old shit I've been hearing for 30 years. I think DeSantis was a mix of hit and misses. Somebody said low energy in chat. I agree with that. If he needs to, Anna was making fun of Vosh for snorting natties on stream. He needs to hit natty before he goes on the debate stage, because he needs to be delivering the same points with a lot more energy.
Yeah. No, I think that's all really well said. I agree with that. DeSantis, this was his comeback or die moment, right? He's down the polls, doesn't have the momentum. Couldn't he make a political comeback tonight? I think there's a good chance he pulled his ass back out of the fire. I think he had a good showing. As far as Vivek, I think you're really right. This is what I don't get about being a politician in 2023, that everything out there is rewarding you for being authentic and real and speaking like off the cuff and all this shit. Like one of the first things I did when the Democratic Party sent me through training is they sit down and they make you memorize your speech, and you go through it until you can give the 30-second version and the 1-minute version and the 15-second version. And you're so trained to do exactly what they're talking about tonight. And I think that worked really, really well in the 90s, in the 2000s. And I think it's just a dead playbook today. Vivek is the only person out there that is running a modern playbook. It's the Trump playbook, because it feels real in a way that the rest of it doesn't. Mike Pence, I appreciate him standing for liberty, but the reality is the only thing that's going to play in media tomorrow is going to be his comments on birth control. That is what's going to dominate media, and it's going to be the main takeaway. Yeah,
it's funny that I'm happy we're talking, because I feel like I have blind spots that I have blind spots that I'm going to be absolutely not flabbergasted, but I'm going to be happy to see play out through your eyes. So, for instance, if I go to CNN, MSNBC, NBC, Fox News tomorrow, and maybe not Fox so much, but if I check out the major broadcasting thing, and it's basically like Republicans are insane, Vivek is a lunatic, his geopolitics are crazy. Pence basically wants to, run a Christian theocracy. He wants to ban abortions down to 6 weeks, and he wants to do 15 weeks exceptions for this, that, the other, or something like that. He basically wants to do, I know, whatever that show isn't as popular now, the one with the Christian theocracy. I forget what it is. The Ladies in the Hoods.
Oh, yeah, Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, Handmaid's Tale. So Handmaid's Tale, like if that's in news stories tomorrow, I feel like you're going to have a pretty good read of the way the mainstream media and Democrats are going to play what I saw tonight. What I think is interesting, though, is the opportunity. I think DeSantis was flubbing, at least from what I could see on social media and what I was seeing in the mainstream stuff. People were saying he's not ready. He's contentious on weird topics he should be prepared for. He's sounding very stumpy when he should be, free flow and all that kind of stuff. And we did see that tonight. But we also saw him come into his element a few times, and we also saw him talk very strongly about his gubernatorial record. So I think that if he has good counsel, if somebody in his ear says, stop worrying about being a fucking weirdo, You are a weirdo. Just
Own it.
Accept that you're a weirdo. Own it. You're a policy wonk, but you are a competent governor out of a relatively popular state, a state that gets made fun of a lot, but still a popular state. You're a competent governor out of a popular state. You did a lot of things that Republicans really support. Lean into that. Dribble down on that. Do not try to be Trump Jr. Do not try to be the perfect teleprompter of the Republican Party. Be who you already are. And I think if he gets that advice, he could do well.
Yeah, no, I think you're really right. It's so hard though, because when you're doing this stuff, it's like you get your brain trained, and people can see this to me, and they comment it when I'm on Twitch sometimes too. Your brain gets broken where 25% of it all the time is thinking about how can I say this so I don't piss people off, right? Because the fundamental job of a politician is to build a constituency and try to bring people together. And it is just kryptonite, right? Like, it is so hard because it makes you sound like you're full of shit all of the time.
Yes. And by the way, I think this is an outdated playbook. I think people can smell this on you. I think part of the reason why Hillary Clinton did so poorly was because she sounded like a teleprompter reel, the most 100%. Professional, robotic teleprompter reel with all of the right answers fed to her by a talking points machine. And then when she went off script, she got hammered for it. So for instance, like the basket of deplorables was probably the most people still talk about that talking point because it just came out in a thing. And you know what she should have done? Instead of backing off and being like, oh yeah, it was a moment of frustration, there's lots of good Republicans, et cetera, she should have been like, nah, fuck them. She should have said, there's plenty of Republicans I love. There's plenty of Republicans I respect. As a matter of fact, I think most Americans are working class, hardworking, talented, intelligent, energetic people, and I do love them. But there's some people who are absolute despicable assholes, and I fucking hate them. And you know what? And like maybe lose the F-bomb for the sake of boomers and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if she came out and owned that instead of retreating, when you retreat, it sounds like you said what you really think, but you're too much of a coward to actually double down. Whereas when you double down, this is something that Trump did every single time. He would have totally loser positions and double and triple down on them. And people, even if they hated positions, they appreciated his balls. And so 100%. that plays infinitely better. And yeah, somebody's mentioning hot sauce in my bag. Yeah, that was cringe. Like even if you love hot sauce, like I love hot sauce. I love Crystal hot sauce is the shit. But you got to actually own it in a way that's organic.
I think it was really hard for Hillary too, because I think she'd been under attack for so long that there wasn't even a real person there, right? Yeah. Like even with this Apple TV show that comes out with her and Chelsea, and like friends of mine are on there and I appreciate it, but she still feels so scripted. It's like there's not really a person there. DeSantis, if he's serious about winning, has got to get away from that. But he's also got to find some stuff to emphasize this. Like, look, you and I have a different assessment, I suspect, on wokeness and the degree to which this should play a role in society, right? Fine, we can disagree on that. But the fact is DeSantis goes after all this stuff in some really weird ways that seems like, I can just tell you, for I think a lot of normal people, and especially women, you see some of the shit he says and you're like, that's a guy I need to stay away from. So
yeah, divider. So I hear you. And I understand, and not only on top of that, I think you're right that it's going to have a political effect. What I mean by that is that if you have a bunch of women who see him going hard on abortion, they see him going hard on CRT, they see him going hard on trans stuff in the elementary schools, and you all associate that with like progressivism and liberalism and enlightenment, and you associate what he's saying with some kind of like rising Christian fascism or Christian theocracy. I understand why, it turns you off. But at the same time, what I think that a lot of people, conservatives, libertarians, centrists, and liberals, they see, I hate to go culture war on it, but I honestly think that the culture war is a distraction. It's a coliseum for people to fight with swords in the coliseum for our entertainment. And as a result, if you see, let's say we go over the Democrat debates and you have Joe Biden able to hold a sentence for the first 20 minutes, but then his amphetamines wear off. And then after that, he seems like he's meandering. And then him and another couple of Democrats get into a conversation about what is the effective tax rate for rich people in order for rich people to technically pay their fair share so they can incentivize school systems in order to, educate kids to a high degree or whatever. It's going to be a fucking snooze fest. Nobody's going to want to watch that shit. It's going to be boring as fuck. Nobody's going to be talking about it. It's going to be dry as hell. Whereas if you're DeSantis, who is a dry, weird, autistic policy wonk, but then he comes out on stage and he says, fuck the progressives, fuck CRT, fuck transgender education, fuck this, fuck that. I'm going after them like a pit bull, like a bat out of hell. I am coming after them. I am fighting them in the wars that they picked. Disney is one of the largest propaganders of progressive messaging through popular media. We see it, and I'm being cringe right now. Understand? I know I'm being cringe, but we see it with Black Ariel, and we see it with all the redheads in Disney films getting replaced, and we see it with all the gender and race swapped characters, and we see this inclusive bullshit all over all over our society. I want meritocracy, I want Christianity, I want the nuclear family, I want this, I want that. Fuck progressives. That is a way better and way more interesting tagline that is infinitely more energetic than let's talk about tax rates.
I agree with you on the energy. That's the good thing. I think where your assessment is wrong is for a lot of Americans, there is a sense in a broad sense of people that they don't like control, right? The gun issue, something that the left has consistently gotten wrong, that there's something about the American character when the government is, and I support gun safety legislation, but at the same time, the reason it's been very difficult to pass those laws here is there's something about the American people when somebody is telling them how to act, we just say, fuck you. There's something in the American character. So at the same time, I think if you've got someone that comes in and seems like a religious nut job that has all these problems and this I gotta be honest, this fringe churchy a message for people, I think it turns a lot of people off. It's not that I think you're seeing a movement in the progressive, in the Democratic Party right now that's just kind of tired of the children over on our own side that push the stuff that just makes no sense, and they never vote, and they're out there just complaining about everything and taking positions that are just not sellable to anyone. I'm certainly tired of these people. But at the same time, there's also another side to that just strikes you as your freaky, crazy uncle that everybody wants to stay away from.
Sure. And but here's the thing is the freaking crazy uncles and the schizophrenic incel conservative boys who are now, they've only had one girlfriend their entire life and they spend 80% of their time playing video games, printing 3D guns in their basement while they're smoking endless amounts of pot, while they're living off of their parents, while they're talking about how the black welfare queens are sucking the state dry and the West is collapsing, which I find endlessly, I actually have some people in mind while I'm saying these things. Guess what?
Is it Rob Noor?
No, he's great actually. He's as far as I know, he's a home healthcare worker, so he actually takes care of people on hospise. So he's he's a very nice guy. He might be a lunatic, but he fits in debates between taking care of people who have 24/7 medical needs. So he does have a kind, gentle, bare soul underneath everything. But anyways, but the point being that those people are energetic enough to vote. They do hate you, and hate you. I'm using progressives as the broad term. They do hate progressives enough to get them to the voting booth. They do hate progressives enough in order to donate to provocative, not just streamers, but provocative politicians. I think Vivek is actually going to be weirdly. We were talking about. I was talking about the parallels between him and Yang. I think that he's going to be a darling of the dissident right because he's isolationist, anti-funding for Israel. They have to be a peer of ours. They can't be a controller of ours or whatever the fuck he said, which is going to play. Nick Fuentes is going to be simping for an Indian guy so hard that you are going to lose your mind.
So crazy. Oh my goodness.
But Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be our guy of the dissident right just because he's isolationist and he says all the right things.
100%. All right, awesome. I gotta be up for 6 a.m. meetings. So I'm gonna bounce. I know Wick wanted you to pop in if you've got a chance, but
Yeah,
I
I'll
cannot
pop in.
wait
I'll
to
say
cover this whole cycle with you.
100%. I wrote down 5 other topics for us to discuss.
Woo!
We could find media content related to them and then do the same thing we just did.
Amazing. I love it. Talk to you soon.
All right, catch ya. All right, cool. Yeah, so Ragnarok Odinson says, when the Hindus saved the West, bro, that's a legendary story if it happens. Well, guess what? Sikhs are some of the people who resisted, Islamic incursion. So maybe, I know he's not Sikh. I think he's Christian or whatever. But maybe we need a ethnically Sikh warrior to come save us and remind us of our own greatness. Maybe that's what we need. Let me just check on Wick real quick and IRI. Let me just see if they're y'all still on or no. I like all these people. I liked Christie. I liked Christie. He's just not going to win. Yeah. So I like Christie. He's not going to win. I liked Pence supporting the Constitution. He's not going to win. I like Vivek. He's not going to win, but he's going to be charismatic, and I think he might go the distance because I think he's new, he's interesting, he's got cool things to say. I think he's going to do well. Then when it comes to actual people, DeSantis is obviously he's the clear. If it's not Trump, it's going to be DeSantis. That's my opinion anyways. The Arkansas governor, he was too dry. He's not going anywhere. And then the constitutional Republican, the other governor, he was a good dude. He had everything right to say from a constitutional conservative Republican perspective, but he wasn't sexy. He wasn't fun. He touched too much grass. He wasn't spicy enough. And so he said all the right things, but he didn't say it in an interesting way. And I'm not going to lie. I think that is probably as important as saying the right things is saying them in a way that's going to get you some level of attention. I also think the black gentleman, I think he'll probably go the distance just because Republicans are going to want a minority candidate to represent besides Vivek to show that they're not racist. But yeah, let's see. I forget Wick's symbol, so I'm looking for it right now. I'm going to see if Wick's still on, and maybe I'll join him. Chud Logic, Independent Thought. To be honest, I don't want to be on much longer. I kind of just want to jump in, say hello, share my thoughts, and dip out. So if I can find him, we'll join. If I can't find him, then we might just call it. Den of Fools is tomfoolery. That's layman. Sorry, I'm literally in 30 Discords. But if you guys have donos, send me donos. I need money. It's not as bad. It's not as bad as they got 7 people backstage, bro. I'm not waiting in line. The watch party has 30 people. No, I'm not waiting in the line with fucking 7 people to get on the fucking panel. No offense. I love Wick. I love Erudite. I love all these people. It appears by yourself. Oh, okay. I've been by myself. Let me go full cam. Full cam. Boom. So yeah, give me money if you have money. Brianna Wu and I are actually going to be doing a weekly show. We're kind of going to be doing what we just did. Maybe we'll just debate amongst ourselves. Maybe we'll interview people. We're going to be dialing in the format. But if she wants to do React Andy stuff, where we literally find media related to a topic we want to do, and then we want to use it as a launch point in order to talk about subjects that we're passionate about, I would fucking love that. So what's your thoughts on the 40K content released today? It's insane. I am so excited, but I really wish I didn't have to work tomorrow. I saw the Pariah Nexus trailer. It looks phenomenal. I am ecstatic about the Pariah Nexus trailer. I am also ecstatic about the Space Marine gameplay breakdown. I am also ecstatic about what was the other one? There was another one that released. Was it a Sisters of Battle trailer? I forget. There was some other thing that they released. There was an Age of Sigmar trailer that released recently. No matter what, there's a lot of good content coming down the pipe. I'm very excited. So Pariah Nexus is going to be a fucking banger, I can tell you. I don't know if the Astartes guy did it, but it did great. So I'm just going to scroll up a little bit, just check in on interesting comments. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. If you have donations, please give them now. Do super chats, do whatever. If you got money, if you don't have money, don't worry. I just appreciate you watching and giving me sweet, sweet ad revenue dollars. I've had a blast. I had an absolute fucking blast tonight. Hanging out with Brianna, talking with somebody who's smart, who disagrees with me, and reviewing content that I love, talking about autistic political people. Man, I would do this all fucking day if I could. I love this shit. Liberals would be the Adeptus Mechanicus. No. I disagree. Adeptus Mechanicus are like simultaneously anarcho-capitalist and also like, I don't want to say anarcho-communist. They're like corporatists. They're like a corporation from the age of colonization. They're like the East India Trading Company. So I don't think they're liberals at all. They are very authoritarian. They do not support people at all. Good night. This was great. Thank you, Dr. Zayas. I appreciate you. The white saviors are getting browner every day. He's Hindu. Oh, nice. Nice, Astronaut Farmer. Thank you for sharing that with me. I didn't know he was Hindu. Speaking of Nora, he and Andrew are in WIC right now. That's sick. I do love those people, but again, I'm not waiting in line, and I'm not gonna throw elbows in order to yell at schizos or whatever. Watching schizos and hanging out with a smart person debating them was actually my perfect cup of tea today. I love fighting with internet schizos. It's very fun. But I hope you guys have appreciated Brianna, even if you viciously disagree with her, even if you don't, like trans gals or whatever, even if you're transphobic yourself or whatever, I hope you appreciate that she is insightful. She is articulate. She is hooked into this world. She has insights that are actually easy for me to disagree with without being vicious about it. And I feel like she gives me a good counterbalance that allows me to basically have somebody good to spar against. So no, I love tonight. I thought it was great. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I deeply enjoyed creating it. Counterpoints, how are you? And you've seen all the 40K content released today? Yes. So we were just talking about that. Pry Nexus is going to be a banger. The new RTS Age of Sigmar game I will play if I go full time, but I don't have time like that right now. And then of course, Space Marine 2 gameplay breakdown was phenomenal. I didn't even listen to all the audio. I literally just watched somebody playing the game, and I thought it looked fantastic. Nikki Haley was the only ascended Brahmin on that stage. Probably. I think that's the person who tries to get other people to enlightenment. So From Earth says, bruh, Christie. Listen, Chris Christie, not gonna lie. It's a chunky fucker, right? It's fat, eats M&Ms, doesn't have as much self-control as he should. Kind of an asshole governor from an asshole state, all that kind of shit. He was on fucking fire tonight. He was going up against the audience. He was fighting them. They were booing him in the beginning, and they were cheering him by the time he was wrapping up. He was fighting the good fight. Let me fix that. He was fighting the good fight. He was standing for republicanism. He was articulate. He was intelligent. He highlighted his background, all that kind of stuff. Literally, Chris Christie would be a phenomenal. I hate to say this. It's totally ableist and fatphobic. But he would be a phenomenal presidential candidate if he was a gay Chad. If he was doing steroids and lifting weights, he would be the strongest fucking Republican ever. As a matter of fact, somebody get me Chris Christie's team. We need to get that guy some fucking testosterone. We need to get him a weightlifting regimen, and I will give him the presidency in 5 years. Pepe's Energy is still favoring Trump, and by Pepe Energy, I mean the dissident right. Vivek has some favor to the Pepe. Yeah, I mean, Trump's white, so that makes sense. Just throw him in the bedroom. I'll be there in 10 minutes, or you can throw him in here. I don't care. I'll wrap up literally in the next 5 minutes. My wife is trying to give me my baby, so I'm going to wrap this up in literally the next 2 minutes. We need a true constitutionalist and not a pandering swamp creature. From Earth, you say that. You say that. The two constitutionalists were the most boring fuckers on the stage tonight. There's no way they're going to win. What do you want? You want that dude from some buttfuck state that I wasn't even paying attention to? There was the one guy from Arkansas, and then the other guy who was fundamentally correct on every single one of his takes. An actual constitutional conservative Republican. He was based the entire night. He said the most based things in the most boring way possible. It was actually like an art form. And that's not his fault. He's in his 50s or 60s, He's not used to this weird shitpost world. Counterpoints, that's the same question. Da Emperor, true. Left is best politics, great debate, true. Yeah, I'm broke as fuck, sadly. No, it's totally okay. I actually do have a little bit of money. I'm not rich. I'm not, I'm not going full time anytime soon, but we do have a little bit of money in the bank.
Berk. Is there some work of his you found most useful and insightful, or is it all of it? I'd like to read some Berk.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretend that I've read all theory, but I haven't read all theory. Let me share my no shit assessment of Burke from the exterior, which is basically just like reading his biography and talking to layman Joseph. He's a very smart guy. So as far as I understand it, Edmund Burke he might have even been Irish, which is crazy, but he's some kind of English statesman, popular in his day, et cetera, et cetera. He sees the French Revolution and he's like, fuck that. And so what he realizes is that monarchists and traditionalists are holding on to tradition so aggressively that they allow the exterior society to rot. And as a result, revolution festers in the society. And then eventually progressives and revolutionaries they basically destroy the society, and there's bloody violence in the streets and everybody dies and it's horrible. So what he decided was that Burkean conservatism, as far as I can understand it, is a philosophy that says, start with the status quo. Start with what is. Assume that what is relatively good and functions for a reason. Listen to progressives and liberals and Enlightenment people and skeptics about the status quo. And then if they have real points that are actually like could reform the system in a way that makes sense, that actually improves the world, then you can take that into consideration, maybe experiment with it, see if it's good, incorporate it into the world. However, it is your job as a conservative to filter out all of the dog shit ideas of progressives, liberals, and revolutionaries, and it's your job to stand firm on the things that make society function. That's my understanding of Burke. Also, Burke has another statement where he says that the social contract is not just between the living in an existing society. This is a mistake that I see antinatalists make all the time. They just say, like, as long as you can live a pleasurable life, who gives a shit, do whatever you want to do, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Burke says it's a contract between the dead, the living of today, and the living of the future. And so as a result, you have to take the ideas and belief systems of your forebears, figure out what they thought that was actually intelligent. You have to apply it in the modern day. And then you also have to say, what is going to yield a better future for the people of tomorrow? And in that way, you're balancing the responsibilities between three generations, but really three temporal states of being in order to create the optimized society. And I think that's incredibly insightful and incredibly powerful. So that's what I understand of Burke. Do you think it's good for a candidate to harp on distancing the Oval Office from normal American lives? Seems like it's been too much of a focal point for too long. Yes, but it's, power is getting concentrated in the executive branch. Trying to take the executive branch is more efficient from a political capital perspective than it is to try to dilute the power of the executive branch, just seizing power and then doing what you want. Unfortunately, this is how republics collapse, but also, unfortunately, it's going to be the path of least resistance and therefore the most likely political path for any political aspirant. Have a good night, Connor, in chat. See you next time. You streaming Friday? I don't know. We might be doing this show Friday nights very often. Just getting here. Did you guys do a chat poll about who won? No, but I mean, if you want to tell me who you won, I'll read it out loud. Not Brianna's fucking base. Good. Christian Valeris. Good. I'm happy you like her. You know what? I am transphobic and I like Brianna. Yes. Yes. That's what we're doing. She may be trans, but she has the First Amendment as much as my right-wing ass does, and I'll defend her to speak no matter how much I hate her opinions. Very based. We're really hitting the authoritarian, centrist, liberal trifecta. We're doing good tonight. I love it. Night. I'll wait until Connor ends the stream. Yep. He's from New Jersey, so calling him articulate is ableist. True. Oh, man. I love it. I'm catching up with you guys. Yeah, so you are correct. Yeah, I think I read like a synopsis of his biography or whatever. And then I think I just read like a few really base quotes. And I also had another person who had read him, work into it. Why buy into the pageantry? Because this is how it works. Sorry, King, you're in Rome, and the way to rule is with bread and circus. So if you resent the fact that you have to rule with bread and circus, you're going to spend more time railing against bread and circus than you are going to do a ruling. So my recommendation is you get with the fucking program. What's your thought on the distant right inevitably branching or balancing out all the leftist progressive policies? History shows the right tends to reform where the left burns things. That's fine. It's fine. It's our role. So it's the left wing to push for progress. It's the right wing to actually temper that progress. And eventually we will reach some level of homeostasis, and then we'll move to the next progressive issue of the day. I know that a lot of people don't like the progressive arc of history, but I do think that, was it Hegel? Was he the person who talked about, the dialectics or whatever? I think he was totally right on dialectics. Where's Connor co-streaming? I am co-streaming to Twitch and YouTube, and I'm on a brand new website called Arium, A-R-I-U-U-M, and we're multi-streaming right now, and you can go to Arium and check it out. It's basically like a streaming website that we're building for an RTMP destination, so you can be a little bit more edgy in the chat, and also it's going to be exclusively debate and political content. However, we are testing it out right now, and it does seem like there's some lag issues with stream stuff, so it's unfortunate, but we're working on it. For your answer, thoughtful to say the least. Thank you kindly. All right. Anyways, my 3-month-old son is sitting in a rocker in my bedroom right now, and my wife is trying to go to sleep, and it's 11:30, and I'll be waking her up in 4 hours in order to go back on baby duty. She is able to, like co-sleep and like watch the kid and all that kind of stuff, so it's not like she's only getting 4 hours of sleep, but the more sleep she can sleep by herself, the better she feels as a result. So no, I had a blast. I hope you guys had a blast as well. We are going to be doing these more frequently. Hopefully we're going to get down to weekly. I hope that I'm proving myself to be a worthy debate opponent to Brianna Wu, and then hopefully she'll be interested in continuing this project, and hopefully we can get some money behind it. And if we get some money behind it, then you'll literally have a crossfire style program with me and Brianna Wu. So should be fun. Okay, parasocial love to you and yours. Good night for now. Give me money. Love you. Bye.